Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome to the program. It's Jeff Gerstmann. Hi, I'm here this week hosting this installment of The Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast about video games and the people who play them, and the people who love them. The people, not the video games. It's about video games, the people who love video games, and the people who love video games. And no one else. That's it, and that's all. And then occasionally wrestling, I don't know. But not so much. Just a little, just a smidge, just a touch. Just a touch from time to time. Big week for video games. I don't know, as far as like new releases are concerned. Easter was over the weekend, and we got together with some friends of the family, and hid some eggs and did, just kind of hung out, just whatever, like real low key stuff. They have a 9-year-old boy, and I was talking to him. And he asked the same question that he has, is like, and it's I don't have a good answer to it. Because it's not. He said, "Are you still a YouTuber?" I'm like, sure. No, like not real. I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. How many subscribers do you have? I'm like, it's not. There's a nuance to this whole thing that is completely lost on you. But I don't know. He's very, they seemed impressed with that aspect of it. I'm like, it's not really, I don't know, man. He then proceeded to launch into telling me a billion things about Roblox, or the specific Roblox game. Like I had to kind of pull it out of him that it even was a Roblox thing, because at first he said, "Do you play Rivals?" And I was like, "No, man, I don't like Overwatch or any of that other shit at all." I did not say shit. And then he started getting into this whole thing, no, I only have to beat this guy and this guy, and then there's a my loadout. You get a if you beat everybody, you get a Uzi that does double damage. It's really OP, and starts like breaking down like the exact intricacies of his loadout in this game that is part of Roblox. That I think it's called Rivals. I went ahead and installed it. I installed Roblox again to mess with it a little bit. I was like, oh yeah, this is like bad Call of Duty. This is like a super bad first-person shooter that feels like total shit. And they're like, this kid could do better. This kid could be playing a better feeling game. Anyway, he started going on and on about it, about like, okay, if I hit him with the AR and then do this with the Uzi and then do this with the, and had like, okay, if it crits, it hits for this much. And so what I need to do is do this. And then by the time I get down that low, usually it only take 1 or 2 shots with the Uzi, and I'm pretty good with headshots. And I was like, okay, yeah. And they started talking about riot shields. And so like, I'm trying to insert like, because the thing he's describing is like every other fucking video game, every other shooter that exists. And so like, he's talking about the riot shield and how the riot shield is a problem. I'm like, yeah, well, they took the riot shield out of Call of Duty this year because they wanted a more aggressive game, and they didn't want people hiding in the corner with a riot shield. But it was really fun to be able to stick C4 to the front of the riot shield and kill people, you know, and take people out that way, and so on and so forth. And that he understood. He understood the very nature of just like, yeah, no, you got to stick stuff. You got to stick satchels to the front of the riot shield. Like, yeah, satchels, yes. He was very, very dialed in. Like I said, like just every little bit of nuance about each weapon's damage and fall off, and you know, just like all of this stuff about it. Like he was very, very serious about it, and I was pretty stoked about that. But it was just like, you know, it was interesting because it's like we were speaking the same language about like, and he's like playing it, you know, filtered 3 levels down through like a Roblox knockoff. And I didn't realize, I wasn't sure. I suspected that at the time, but it wasn't until I came back here and installed it and played a little bit myself that I was like, oh yeah, dude, this game is free. Like, this is a free video game. Like, yeah, man, it feels like it. Yeah, I don't know. It was a very interesting conversation because, like, a couple of years ago, every conversation was about Minecraft and Redstone and all the other stuff, and, you know, just like weird builds and everything else. And now he's 9. He's done with that bullshit, and he's shooting people in the head. I'm like, yes, okay, fine. I can relate to this. God damn it. Yeah, it was neat. It was real neat. But I played a couple of I played a couple of rounds of it, and just like so it's like 2v2, it's very small arena type stuff, at least what I saw so far of it. It was like very small 2v2 first person shooter fights. Like, not unlike Rocket Arena, but really kind of like, you know, also a little bit more like the Gulag inside of Call of Duty Warzone or something. Like, it was a very small map, and it's round based. And it's 2v2. And I matched in with no partner, and so I was 1v2, and I fucking smoked these motherfuckers, man. Like, it was just whoever these people were on the other side. One of them quit halfway through the rounds, and then the other one did not stand much of a chance. I was like, that's right. That's what you kids get for playing these fake-ass video games. Graduate to the real ones, and then we'll talk. God damn it. Yeah, no, it was very weird, man. Kids these days can't line up a headshot for shit, turns out. So I don't know if you maybe you'll have a similar experience if you dive into this nightmare. And then I promptly quit, and I think it's still installed, but I should probably uninstall. I don't like leaving. There's 2 pieces of software I don't like leaving installed on my PC unless I am actively using them. And there's no good reason for this, but it's Zoom and Roblox. Those are 2 things that as soon as I am done using them, I want to uninstall them immediately. Zoom especially. I don't know. I install Zoom 10 minutes before I have a Zoom call. I do the Zoom call. I immediately uninstall Zoom. And I don't mind it. I'm never going to be a person that when someone says, "Do you want to hop on Zoom and do this or whatever?" I'm never going to be like, "Well, how about we use Microsoft, or get on Discord, or whatever, man." No. I'm never going to be that person, but I will happily install Zoom and then immediately uninstall Zoom. The web client's not good enough. Yes, they do. Yeah, you can use it out of a browser, but usually when I am getting onto a Zoom thing, it is because audio is being recorded and video, or like it is. We need something a little more dedicated and a little bit better. So the web client never works out for that. All right, I'm going to take a deep breath before we get into talking about City of the Wolves. Let's take a quick break, and then I will come back and we will get into the latest SNK fighting game. finding the right doctor is a total hassle. I don't know when the last time you tried to do this is. Maybe you're putting off all your medical stuff and just kind of hoping for the best. But if you need a specialist, or you're like, oh, I need to go find a dermatologist, or I need to find even just a primary care doctor, getting appointments, getting in and finding one, and finding one that meets your exacting needs, it's tricky. Even if you have insurance, the insurance will have a website and it'll list a bunch of doctors that theoretically take your insurance. But I can't tell you how many times I've called up some of those people and they've been like, oh no, that's out of date. We don't take that anymore. We take them to this instead of this. And we don't, or vice versa, doctors that should be available, that are not listed in one way or another. It's crazy. It's crazy. You need some help sometimes to figure out, where am I going to find a doctor? Is there someone near me that takes my insurance that does this well? And all of that. That's where Zocdoc comes in. Zocdoc can help you filter through all of these medical professionals to find ones that actually meet your needs. Zocdoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. That's right. Yeah, you don't have to call on the phone, and it turns out your lunch hour is the same as their lunch hour, so every time you try to call to book an appointment, their phones are turned off for like 2 hours in the middle of the day. Hey, Zocdoc, just install the app, go to the website, something like that, and you just find a doctor, book a doctor. That's in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty. That's mental health, dental health, primary care, urgent care, and more. Tons of filters to help you find exactly what you need. And once you find the one that you're looking for, you can see their actual appointment openings. Choose a time slot that works for you and click to instantly book a visit. Appointments made through Zocdoc also happen fast. You can have them within 24 to 72 hours of booking in some cases. You can even score some same-day appointments. That's almost unheard of. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to Zocdoc.com/JeffG to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/JeffG. Zocdoc.com/JeffG. Fatal Fury, City of the Wolves. It's a game whose name I can barely remember. Because I just, for whatever reason, never thought of Mark of the Wolves as a Fatal Fury game. That's silly because, of course, it's a Fatal Fury game. But by virtue of it being so commonly referred to as Garou, Mark of the Wolves, Mark of the Wolves was its own thing. It was not just, and when they would localize it, the various versions they've brought over the years, they have referred to it as Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves, and it's just kind of a thing that they did. Anyway, the long-awaited sequel to the Neo Geo classic, one of the coolest fighting games ever made, Mark of the Wolves. It's hard to, it's unless, Mark of the Wolves is a beautiful video game. It represents the pinnacle of 2D fighting games of that era, before they started to get a little weird, or before the Guilty Gear series came and made fake 2D 3D and some of the other things. It is one of those late era arcade games, late era 2D games that just looks fabulous, and that's something that still stands up to this day. Great 2D art still works all these years later because by and large, they stopped making games like that. So you don't really have modern comparisons. You can look at today's polygonal video games and then go, PlayStation 1 games look like trash. You have those comparison points. But Mark of the Wolves is the top of the heap. It is one of the greatest. This current game that is out this week, it's out right now. If you, I don't know if it's like you have to buy a specific. Anyway, their early access period is started yesterday. And so you can, in theory, buy and play Fatal Fury: City of the Wolves right now. But I think the official release date for it is later this week. I really don't like this game at all. I really, really, really don't like this game at all. Just about everything it's doing is it feels fucking terrible. Like I took a bunch of notes, man. I don't normally take notes for games for the podcast, but I was mad last night and wrote a bunch of stuff out. Part of that is because, again, I put Mark of the Wolves on a real pedestal. I think it's a fantastic game. I think you should play that game. If you want to play this game, you should instead get that. You could probably get whatever more recent digital download version of that game for 15, whatever, 10, 15 bucks, whatever it is. I don't like the way this game looks. I don't like the way this game feels. I don't like the way anything about the way this game feels. Like, it feels like that they sat down and said, what are other fighting games doing to, like, we want to try to get some aggression out of it? Okay. And they put a bunch of systems in place to try to, make the game feel aggressive the way something like a Street Fighter 6 would, or what have you, but like without understanding anything about how and why those systems are put into place. It feels like that they just looked at, like, what's popular these days, and threw some stuff in there that really is aping that stuff without really understanding why. And so they don't really pull it off, I think is the thing. God, what do we got here? They've built a bunch of systems, and they had like Just Defense and some of the things that, have been in plenty of other fighting games, including Mark of the Wolves. They've put a lot of those systems in place. Like, building meter is weird. It doesn't, it seems like it's really funneling you down this path of using a lot of your EX moves. And using EX moves builds up a different meter that is sort of like the Street Fighter 6 system of, like, you can, if you use too many of your moves, you go into burnout. The concept here is more like you are revving up a meter, and if it goes over 100%, you overheat. And it's the same basic concept of, like, oh, you're going to be unable to use these systems for a little bit. You might get guard crushed. You might get, so there's, and it feels like that they really wanted a system that was designed for you to be constantly engaging with that meter, getting it up to close to the limit, and then using your normals and other stuff. As you land your strikes, it will knock the percentage points down a little bit. And that's how they want you to kind of build your super meter, is like you're kind of constantly chaining your shit together, and then punching it down and then building it back up. And that's maybe how you're supposed to be. Is that the right way to build meter? It's a lot of systems. It's a lot of systems that don't really feel like they fit together, I guess is what I would say. Like, there's aspects of that where you go, like, okay, well, maybe they want you to kind of like ride the line here and play this in this very, very specific way. But they also give you like 9 other systems in place that don't really funnel into any of that and don't really contribute in the same way. So, like, the best way to build meter is to do, so it feels like a lack of harmony in the systems that they have put in place. And I think that's a real problem. They have their SPG system, which is sort of like they had that in the previous game, and it's a little bit less flexible here. Like it's like it does a little bit more damage depending on what section of your life meter you choose to make the part where you can do your top attack, or I guess they don't call it a top attack anymore, do they? They just call it an SPG attack. You just call in the special patrol group. But it's basically the same type deal. It's like, here's this armored move that you can just kind of bust out, and depending on the character, like, yeah, some of those moves are, I don't know, they feel a little bit more, because they're fully armored, like you can really just fucking, in a lot of cases, just use that as an answer for things that are coming your way. It does rev you up a little bit, so you can't just sit there and hit it over and over again. Which then also is like, well, the whole point of the move before was that you could kind of just hit it over and over again, and while you were in that section of your life meter, and you can make it a smaller section if you wanted to, trade some of that space for a little bit more damage, and like they made different choices in the previous game that I think worked better. The game has an interesting combo system insofar as they want you to chain some of your EX moves together. And so if you're timing all of that right, that is like sort of interesting, but again, you are going to, you're going to burn up a lot of that meter really quickly to do it. And I think just a lot of the normals and normals and cancels, and just like a lot of the stuff feels bad in the hand. This is something that I think is actually like noticeably worse on PlayStation 5 than it is on PC. I played a little bit on a PS5 Pro and a little bit on PC. The PS5 version feels like noticeably more latent on the input, and maybe that's something that they will patch over time or something, but that's, it's certainly not the first time that a PlayStation version of a fighting game has had a bad hand feel, for sure. I think the fighting systems and stuff that they got in place are things that, like, when you look at them on paper, you're like, oh, okay. And then in practice, I think a lot of it is just miserable to engage with. Just not I don't think any of that stuff, any of these systems are like fun to use. I think they've taken characters that were fun and exciting characters and turned them into just fucking mush, man. This game feels like gruel, gray, beige. Like it's just this blech. The look of it, they're going for this kind of like comic book style, this panel style on the main menu that then filters into how the characters look, hard black lines on the edges and all this stuff. And I don't think, I think that stuff doesn't look very good here. Certainly plenty of games have tried to do stylish takes on like, okay, we're going to take these polygons and make them, look a certain type of way. I don't think it's a very effective look here. I don't know that I feel like a lot of the King of Fighters games, there's like a fair amount of like attempts that they have made at different styles over the course of KOF in 3D. And I think a lot of that stuff looked kind of rough too. They hit a point in the middle there where it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is like, yeah, okay. They finally found like a decent look for KOF, and this just, yeah, I think the look of this game is really sour. I think it robs the characters of a lot of their natural charisma, and just like the animations feel a little lifeless. Like and that's just the characters themselves. I think the backgrounds look mostly okay. Speaking of backgrounds, there's like one background in the game, a single background in the game that allows for 2-line fighting, which if you remember kind of the early days of Fatal Fury, they did this thing where you could have a front line and back line, and you could jump between the two or roll between them, or you could be on the other line and then kick back into the main line, and so you're kind of like standing on two different planes. That whole thing always was like the thing that I felt prevented some of those early SNK fighters from like feeling cool, was like the way that they tried to do this 2-lane fighting. I think that stuff kind of never worked. Here it feels like that they just like, because it's only in a single background, it feels like something that they just like thought of at the last minute and were like, oh yeah, okay, and like threw it in there. Like it doesn't, it's almost not even worth mentioning because it's just like whatever, you know, like it just feels so thrown in. But they've got moves where you can knock a guy from one line to the other and then chase him, jump across and hit him and so on. The sorts of moves you would expect, I guess, if you have seen some of those early two-lane games. You know, they did it better over the course of the franchise for sure, and then eventually kind of moved away from it. As King of Fighters became kind of the ascendant fighting brand within the kind of SNK universe, like we did a good job of forgetting about all of that horse shit. And it's silly to see it back, especially in such a half-assed kind of way. They've got guest characters in there that, you know, like it. We talked about this stuff as they announced it because it was just so fucking weird. Cristiano Ronaldo, who is a soccer player, he has some soccer moves and just like he does not seem like a great fit. The DJ, is it Salvatore Ganacci or Salvatore Ganacci? He is also in the game. Apparently they both seem to have some ties to like the Saudi royal family who currently owns SNK, so the whole thing is leaving a real bad taste in a lot of people's mouths around that specific stuff. I think that stuff is gross, but also I think that they are fucking just bad fits, period. Like, if it is something where the fucking money guy came in and said, yeah, we're trying to sports wash Saudi, you know, like, could you put Ronaldo in this because we love that guy, and also there's this DJ I like if it really was that, and you know, we'll probably never know the exact story of how this stuff came to be. But there is enough to it to where you're like, oh, okay, there's like fans for like, okay, this guy plays on the Saudi team, and this guy is like a favorite DJ of the royal, you know, whatever it is. Like there's just enough linkage there that you just go, oh, this whole thing fucking sucks. And then, you know, if you really want to connect every single dot imaginable here on this, this game was also, the logo of this game was on the mat at WrestleMania over the weekend, apparently. I saw some pictures of that, and WWE loves the Saudi money. so like, really, do you think that WWE gave them a deal on the ad space because they already have business ties with the Saudis and all of this other stuff? Is it all just kind of like one big cluster, you know? There was more than one clusterfuck over the course of WrestleMania weekend. So that's gross. But like, separately from the gross part about it, they are bad fits for the game. They're fucked up characters that don't fit very well at all. It's got a story mode in it where it kind of presents you with a map of Southtown, and you're just kind of like picking fights, and you know, like it's the sort of thing that I think 10, 15 years ago would have been received a little bit better. But like it's just, it feels very shallow and flat compared to what I think, you know, when we look at like the story mode stuff in Street Fighter 6 or obviously like the Mortal Kombat story modes have been the way they are for a long time, but like this just feels like, oh, I don't know, we put a map in here and you can fight some guys and you level up when you do, and you're like, okay. I found it to be really uninspired and really kind of not really worth engaging with. Played some online. The netcode seems viable. Like it seems, functional. It's got like a clone mode in there where you can kind of train an AI clone or fight against, people's replay versions. Or it feels like a very, again, like a pretty shallow thing compared to like the clone, like the AI system in Killer Instinct, like the whole ghost system in Killer Instinct was really awesome. This feels like a terrible version of that, or like a bad version of Tekken's kind of ghost system as well. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. I'm blown away by how bad it feels. It's something that like through the course of the beta, like it just didn't feel right. Like just the movement and just everything about it in the hand felt off. And I was like, well, I don't know. It's a beta, maybe they'll get it cleaned up by the time it comes out. No, they did not. I'm kind of shocked by that aspect of the game. Like it just feels bad. It like just like combos, banging stuff out, like learning the flow of the game. Like it does have a mission mode for you to kind of do some combos and whatever else. And I think it's a really disappointing release, top to bottom. The franchise certainly deserves better. But even separately from that, I just think on its own merits, it's just it's a bad fucking game. And I'm really bummed out about it. Trying to think if there's anything else to say about it, but I guess that's it. Like they've got they have a ton of music from previous, like the music is by this DJ, like this, they had this DJ contribute to the soundtrack as well as like Steve Aoki, and so by default you're hearing a lot of that stuff. But there's a whole jukebox mode filled with like original music from earlier games in the franchise, so if you prefer those, you can listen to old Fatal Fury music in there, which is kind of cool. But yeah, this is I don't know, man. I think it is super bad. like every aspect of it, I am surprised every time I come back to it, going like, all right, let's work on this and put some work in and make sure. But like I just every time I am like repulsed even further away from City of the Wolves. I think it's a very like it's a miserable experience. And I think SNK has done a lot better more recently with some of the stuff they've done with KOF. I think they definitely hit some bumpy ground over the last 20 years, whatever. You really want to get into like kind of post Neo Geo era SNK. Like I think that they had a really rough time transitioning into 3D, and they hit their stride. They got to a point where they finally, like, these last couple of KOF games are like fine. They're maybe not incredible, they're maybe not as good as the game was in the late 90s or whatever, but like they found a good pace, they found a good way to make a modern KOF game. This feels like them throwing all of those learnings away or something, man. Like I'm surprised. It really caught me off guard. It really caught me off guard, this game. I wanted this one real bad. I was hoping that this one would come together. I mean, they don't even call them, they don't even refer to him as Butt in the game. What are we doing here? Anyway, City of the Wolves is out now. My advice is stay away from it. What else, man? Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3 is out today. Finally, the long-awaited sequel to Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 1. And Code Franklin and, you know, the whole franchise. Do you like Puzzle Quest? Do you remember Puzzle Quest? I guess is maybe the first question there. If you like Puzzle Quest, I think you will like Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3 because it is a new puzzle. It is a Puzzle Quest game in a lot of ways. It is a game where you are fighting against you are fighting a battle against another character or whatever, you know, kind of as the story dictates. You are doing match 3 puzzling versus a thing. You are collecting gems that will let you trigger various effects like healing or spells. You are matching knives that are doing damage to the other side and so on. There, you know, it is at its core that type of game. Now, it does flip that concept on its head over and over again over the course of it, where you're engaging in these more bespoke battles against, I don't know, a bunch of bombs. And the bombs don't hit back, but you have to disarm the bombs. And so you have to be very careful about what you're matching and not matching, because if you match the wrong thing, the bombs will go off and do damage to you. And so they play with it from a gameplay perspective quite a bit along those lines. You have an inventory that you can, you know, buy bandages and stuff because you will want to heal yourself over the course of a battle, or a shotgun that you can put in your inventory and then use that to deal direct damage separately from the match 3 stuff. Like it is, that is the basic concept here. Now that is all wrapped around a story mode and a trait system and all of this other stuff that kind of influences and informs how the puzzle quest goes down. And that whole wrapper is meant to be a sort of statement or ruminations about the state of game development. Like, you are playing the main character of the video game Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3, who becomes aware very early on that he is in an unfinished video game, and that the game is full of unfinished and unbalanced combat scenarios, and that there are rooms that are not done yet. And there are, you know, and so you are making your way through this unfinished game, and learning things about that as you go. And I think that aspect of the game is pretty well done. And I think that they do a good job of giving you reasons to kind of revisit some of those scenarios, because there are multiple branching paths, some of which you won't be able to access the first time you see them, because there's a trait system in place. And so the more you do a certain thing in the kind of the story sequences of the game, you will eventually unlock a trait that will let you go like, oh, now that I have this, I can go back and use it at this thing I couldn't do earlier. For example, one of the earliest parts in the game, you're in a hallway and you're supposed to go look for bugs. There'll be 3 different options. One is like, walk down this hallway. The other one is like, go into this painted door. And then there's a third one that is grayed out because you don't currently have the trait of like bug finder or whatever the specific name of it is. And so you go off down these other tracks, and some of those split in a few different directions. And if you go a certain way, you're fighting clowns. And if you go another way, you're fighting dinosaur zombies and whatever in your kind of puzzle style combat scenarios. And you'll get to a point multiple times where you'll reach the end of a branch, and it will just say, literally, you've reached the end of a branch. It will teleport you back to the last kind of like spoke or hub that you have been to, which is a bar. And then there you can manage your inventory and decide where you want to go from there. And then if you've completed a trait, if you've completed that bug trait, you can go back to that decision point in the game and hit it again. And it'll say, oh, now I can pick this other thing. And there's whole separate story chunks and whole separate rooms that go off in that direction because you did a certain thing enough times. Like there's one called law enforcement. And so the number of times you remark And this isn't something that's always controlled by you, the player. It is just like, because you saw this, it is filling this meter for like law enforcement. And like, oh, you saw a thing and noted that it was illegal. Your character goes like, well, these bombs are against the law. And then it like goes through this whole process of popping up a meter, and it fills up another third to like denote that you are closer to the law enforcement trait. It's real silly. And I think it's a good time. Like, the writing is well done. Initially, I had some trouble with it because I was playing it pre-release, and it doesn't immediately let you know that the game is about bugs and an unfinished video game. Like, the video game stuff like is very quickly revealed. It's not like some big spoiler. But first time in there, there's a lot of stuff where I'm hovering over some of the abilities to figure out what they do, and it's just placeholder text with no information about what does what. I should start the game over now that it's out and see if it's still like that. And that's part of like it's a weird scenario where I'm playing a game about bugs as they are fixing a ton of actual real bugs in the thing, and I'm like, what's real and what isn't? It was a very strange way to play the game. So now that it is out, I think you can be assured that the stuff that's in there is something that you are supposed to see. But yeah, it is, again, I think if, you know, like I like a good match 3. There are a zillion of them out there now. We've been through the ringer and come out the other side 2 or 3 times now over the years, right? Since Puzzle Quest kind of, you know, made this genre of like role-playing game with match 3 as its kind of combat. There have been so many knockoffs and clones, and like, again, like we've been through multiple cycles of this thing got big and then a zillion games came out like it, and a lot of them were bad, and then it went away, and then it kind of and I think even like Puzzle Quest 2 is not a great game, right? I think they kind of got it back with after that, like Puzzle Quest 3, right? But and the Marvel one I remember hearing was like okay, but what was it, Galactrix? Yuck. There's the space one. Yeah, it was a bad game. Anyway, long story short, I think this is a pretty good one of those with some really fun writing around the edges. It is from the developers of Click Holding. A quality experience. Yes, so it's got a really good sense of humor to it. I think they're really kind of trying to say something. I have not finished it yet, but they are also trying to say something about the nature of game development in this. And I think that that's interesting too. You know, playing through this basically abandoned game and some of the different things you will do in story to kind of piece it back together and figure it all out. I think that stuff is really engaging for a specific type of player. But I think even if you're not looking for those sorts of ruminations, I do think that it's a pretty good Puzzle Quest style game with some interesting scenario, like combat scenarios and other stuff like that. Like it's neat. It's Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3. It's out today. Big day for games out today, I guess. But I've been playing a game that also came out about a year ago and came out more recently on console. If you know anything about me, you probably know that I like a game called Target Earth for the Sega Genesis. It is a game in the same franchise as Cybernator, you know, like basically like games that got localized here in the States by different publishers, and so got localized in ways that kind of separated them into different different franchises and whatever else. But yeah, there've been a handful of games in the Assault Suits franchise that have come over to the States. Assault Suit Lenos 2 is a game that came out for the Saturn, and I imported that game as soon as it came out for the Saturn because I was such a big fan of Target Earth, which is Assault Suit Lenos 1. in Japan. Assault Suit Lenos 2 was completely in Japanese and very difficult right out of the gate, and I never got anywhere in it. I used some of the GameSpot import game fund to buy myself a copy of Assault Suit Lenos 2, if I remember correctly, and then was unable to get anywhere in it, both from a language perspective and from a gameplay perspective, and just kind of set it aside. And would return to it here and there over the years, and rarely get anywhere in it. They put it out. So there's this. Is it City Connection that is doing these? It's a great. I love that they have gone and launched a straight up publisher and called it City Connection, because it's such a great. Yeah, it's such a great name. City Connection has been bringing some Saturn games over. They picked up like a lot of the Jalico library and whatever else. So they've been kind of like very lightly, like it's not awesome in a lot of cases where, like some of the stuff you go like, man, they really should have gone a little further here or there or whatever with like elevator action returns and some of the other stuff that they have done. You wish that someone did a little bit more work to them in the process of bringing them back. But they're bringing back some Saturn games that were not released in the States, and that's kind of awesome. Assault Suit Lenos 2 came out about a year ago on Steam. It's a little more recent on... I've been playing it on PlayStation 5. And it's nice to have that game in English and be able to kind of understand it. I'm still dog shit at it, though. God damn it, man. What the fuck? Now I can finally read it, and I'm like, okay, this is what I do. Oh, fuck. Like, it is fucking hard, man. It doesn't feel great, and, like, there's aspects of it that you look at and go like, yeah, this could have been better done. This could have been better done. I wish I could extract the game from this shell and run it on real hardware. Maybe someone has done that. I don't know. Oh man, it's such a it's so frustrating. Like all these years later, to be like, hell yes, they're putting this thing out and it's in English now, and I'm gonna get in here and finally be able to play the follow up to this game that I think is one of the greatest games. I love Target Earth is such a fantastic game. It's very difficult, but not unmanageably so if you spend enough time being very careful with it. Yeah, so for them to come all this way only to be like, oh, by the way, this game is still like there are some cheats in it that I have not touched yet, but you can turn on some things that will make it so like your jet boost meter doesn't deplete as quickly, and there's like 2 or 3 options you have that'll let you sort of cheat a little bit. But yes, as someone who wants to play the official sequel to Assault Suit Lenos, even yes, it's not the same developers. Like yes, there's some, back in the day there were some changes and shifts around there, but I don't know, man. As I still have it somewhere. I have the copy of this game that I bought, and I want to play through that game. maybe I should just find a translation and cheat in an emulator or something like that. Maybe that would be a better way to go. But that's been out for a while now. Again, that just came to PS5. I don't know that I would say that I necessarily recommend it because it's still kind of a motherfucker, man. But this version is in English, so you can at least play it that way. Speaking of games that are available in English, they have remastered The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and they put it as, stop me if you've heard this one before, but they're going to remaster Oblivion, and brother, it is coming out any day now. Any day. It is going to drop out of the fucking sky. Just someday, they are going to take Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and they are going to make it magically appear in front of you. It's going to happen. I couldn't tell you when, but it's gonna wait. I'm getting word. Okay. It came out this morning. It's $50 if you want horse armor. It's $60. Not a good joke. Not a great thing to be joking about. I mean, if we really want to be serious about it here, if we really want to be serious about it here. I don't love it. I love it, but horse armor was a very divisive thing when it happened. People were not joking about it. And so to see all of the context removed from those very real conversations about microtransactions and what is acceptable and what isn't, and trying to, you know, address that, because again, it's if you buy the deluxe version of the game, there's like some new quests in there, and they of course point out, and horse armor. I think it is okay for people to joke about horse armor all these years later. I think the publisher of the game that put out the original horse armor that was so widely hated is something that I don't think that they should be able to get away with. I don't know. Maybe I am overthinking it, but I think it is kind of fucked up. Aside from that, they have remastered Oblivion, which I think Oblivion is a very important video game. If you remember, we talked about this when we were talking about the greatest Xbox 360 games of all time, and just how big of a deal that Oblivion was to the early days of the Xbox 360. Now that was you know, what the Xbox came out like late November of 2005, and Oblivion was March 2006. So it's like, you know, what was that, like 5 months or something? It was a massive video game. It was one of the first big games to appear on that platform. It was one of the early games, along with games like, I would say, Graw, I would say Dead Rising to a certain extent, though I guess maybe that was a little bit later. It was it was a game on the like relatively short list of early Xbox 360 games that set that console apart and made it seem like something more, and made it seem like it was the future of video games. Obviously Morrowind came out on the original Xbox, you know, and this was them iterating on those ideas, but the way that they did it, in a lot of ways, perfected that form in a way that made it very palatable to a much wider audience. Everyone played Oblivion. This was, you know, like this at the time, it was something that was so like people who you would never think would ever touch a fantasy themed anything were playing Oblivion and loving the shit out of it because it was fucking incredible. It is very easily the best time I have ever had with an Elder Scrolls game. It is probably the best time I have ever had with a game by Bethesda Game Studios. Which I say that specifically BGS because I am separating out New Vegas on account of that was by not Bethesda Game Studios. But as far as like games that were led and developed and put out by that specific studio, I think Oblivion is the game that is the best game that they have made. Obviously Skyrim improves on the formula in dramatic and meaningful ways, and you know, like it's that those things are inarguable, but I think in terms of just like how I felt about the game at the time and how it played at the time and what have you, Oblivion was the thing that moved games forward. Skyrim was neat and it had a dragon in it, and I did not like shouting at the dragons or vice versa all that much. And Oblivion was where I think a lot of people first engaged with the Dark Brotherhood and saw that great quest line. It's a great quest line. I think that's a better quest line than the version of it than the Dark Brotherhood stuff that was in later games. Just awesome. Just an awesome Xbox 360 game. Just like huge. The shadow it cast across that console was massive. And again, it was, obviously it came to other platforms and whatever. I mean, this was in the era when anything that they tried to put on PlayStation 3 was just fucking broken. So, whatever. Yes, Oblivion did eventually come to PS3, right? But maybe don't play it there. And so I think it opened up to, I mentioned this on Blue Sky. I just kind of said, man, this was a big game, and a lot of people don't necessarily remember that or give it the credit or that it probably deserves. We kind of gloss over it these days just in favor of discussing Skyrim instead, because obviously Skyrim was such a huge hit as well. But Oblivion Oblivion changed the culture. Oblivion changed video gaming forever. Oblivion opened a lot of players' eyes to Western RPG, to computer RPGs, I guess, if you will. And made that style of game a little bit more viable on those sorts of platforms. I mean, it's very action-oriented. It's not like it's some big turn-based slog or something, the way some of the Western RPGs could be, but Oblivion was the game, it was in the right place at the right time with the right game. In a way that Morrowind was not. It was cool that they did that with Morrowind, but Oblivion was where everything lined up perfectly and changed everything. And it was just a cool as fuck game. And so I think it's really neat that they're putting it back out, because I am constantly thinking, man, I should really play Oblivion again, and then not doing that. So, good on them, I guess, for putting it out in a way that is a little bit, and it sounds like, it just came out this morning. So I loaded it up, went through the character creator, heard Patrick Stewart's voice, got super fucking excited about that, and went oh right, this fucking game is good, man. Holy shit. It's not just some relic. And got really excited about that. And then, yeah, turned it off because I have a podcast to record. But it sounds like that they have reworked elements of the combat and stamina and things of that nature to try to modernize it ever so slightly. It looks dramatically better. It is, they're calling it a remaster. I don't, it's not necessarily a full remake or anything like that, but I am, for a remaster, it looks a lot better, and they are making what seems like meaningful changes to the gameplay and some of the systems in ways that make it probably feel a little less old. And so that's really interesting. To me, a person who was probably eventually going to replay that game anyway. So yeah, I'm very interested in checking it out and seeing what the hell is up with that thing. Because again, Oblivion was Oblivion is a very important video game. And again, I don't know that necessarily comes through anymore because of Skyrim, because of the all the other stuff that, the Xbox 360 went on to great heights and through a variety of games, but but this was kind of some of the early stuff. Arthur Geese was mentioning Fight Night as another good early Xbox 360 game. I had forgotten. It was a time when you were very interested in playing just about anything that was coming out on the Xbox 360 if it was above a certain quality level. But that first Fight Night game with the fucking Burger King in it, just looked crazy. Visually, for the time, it was fucking mind-blowing. In some ways, just how good some of those games looked compared to the generation of consoles we had just come off of. And the launch games of the Xbox 360 don't always convey that. When we think about like, what was it, like NBA 2K6, 2K5, whatever they're calling it then. Perfect Dark Zero, just like the kind of early stuff on the 360, the actual day one launch day stuff that shipped on disc was not not their best work. But again, it wouldn't take long before we would start to see bigger and better games that you just saw and went like, oh man, I can't believe that this is. I don't know that I felt this way at the time, but like looking back on it now, it's a pretty dramatic shift for gaming. Condemned. Condemned was a great launch game. I fucking completely finished Condemned. I love Condemned. But yeah, there's it was just an interesting batch of games in that first year that really helped set things apart. And obviously, like, it's what made the Xbox 360 work at all and made it so that they mattered that generation. Like the risks they took, the necessary risks they took in shutting down the original Xbox as quickly as they possibly could and trying to rush out a new console, and that came with some fucking costs, right? And that came with the Red Ring stuff that, maybe if they had not rushed the Xbox 360 to market, they would have uncovered that earlier. Who knows, right? But at the end of the day, that stuff, I think we've said it before, but like, again, like the very idea that the Xbox 360 was able to flourish the way that it was in spite of all of the fucking hardware issues with the Red Ring stuff and everything is really crazy. And I think it speaks to just how popular that thing was, and that they hit the right. They hit the exact right window when people were looking for something, and they hit the exact right, like the games looked great and were powerful. The system level online integration was novel and interesting and all of that. They hit all of their marks on that one, and they would never do it again. But hey, so Oblivion's out now. They ended up, I think it was even just yesterday that they were like, oh, by the way, come back tomorrow. We're going to tell you all about this. We got something to say about Oblivion. But like, this thing's leaked out. There's been gameplay footage all over the place. There were screenshots. There were, like it was one of the worst kept secrets in terms of just like a game that was going to magically drop. That's right. It's also a magical drop sequel. But like in terms of games that just like kind of pop out of nowhere, it was not a very well kept secret at all. So that aspect of it's kind of weird. Like it's and just yeah. I bet it's a bummer to be shipping another game this week when that thing is being just kind of plopped onto people and seemingly well received from some of the early discussion around it. But we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, I don't know. I'll try to spend some time with it. Let's take one more break. We'll come back and we will get into the news after this. Hey, how's your hair? How's your hair going? What that hair do? If you're starting to notice your hair thinning when you look in the mirror, you're not alone. And life just gets busier and busier, so sometimes it feels like there's just not enough time in the day to do something about it. So try Hims Hair Loss Solutions. You can avoid jumping through a bunch of frustrating hoops and get access to treatment without even leaving your home. That's right. Hims provides you with convenient access to a range of hair loss treatments that work, all from the comfort of your couch. And Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You can choose from personalized, chewable, oral, spray, and serum treatments to find what works best for you. And the process is simple, and it's 100% online, so you don't have to go see a doctor and all that other stuff. Just answer a few questions online, and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/Jeff. That's HIMS.com/Jeff for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/Jeff. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. In the news, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered, now available. It's on Game Pass. They also put it onto the PlayStation, and it's on Steam. Yeah, this is all from, or not all, but this is from Virtuos, which is also the studio that is doing the Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta remake, remaster, whatever that thing is, with Konami. Curious to see how that eventually comes through, but yeah, they did all that work. In other news, the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders are finally due to start this week. They will begin April 24th here in the United States. I believe Canada is also on the same clock for that stuff. The price of the console has not changed. The price of software has not changed. The price of accessories has gone up as a result of the of market conditions. However, Nintendo Switch 2 accessories will experience price adjustments from those announced on April 2nd due to changes in market conditions. Other adjustments to the price of any Nintendo product are also possible in the future, depending on market conditions. So yes, with the tariffs in place, it seems like that they are going to pass the lack of savings on to you for accessories. The end result of this is now, if you want Joy-Cons for a Switch 2, it's $95. $95 freaking dollars. A Pro controller will be $85. The Switch 2 camera is $54.99. I believe that these are, in a lot of cases, like raises of around $5, maybe in some cases $10. But just for the, if you want the full lineup here of pricing, the Switch 2 is still $449.99. The bundle with Mario Kart is $499.99. Mario Kart World is $80. Bonanza is $70. The Pro controller, $84.99. The Joy-Con 2, $94.99. The charging grip, if you want a grip for the Joy-Cons that will charge the controller, that will run you $40. Which is a lot of money for a charging grip. A strap is $14.99 if you want to put a strap on your Joy-Con 2s like some kind of fucking sucker. If you want the wheel set, is that just are they making a plastic shell to put the Joy-Con in? Is that the wheel set? $25. The camera is $55. If you want a new dock, if you want a second dock for your Switch 2, that is $120. A carrying case and screen protector is $40. The all-in-one carrying case is $84.99. An AC adapter will run you $35. And if you want Samsung's official Nintendo Switch 2 micro SD express card at a size of 256 gigabytes, that will run you $59.99. We've seen price increases in a lot of other parts of electronics and stuff, and kind of gaming adjacent things. We've seen some companies say that they are going to stop taking orders from the U.S. I believe Anbernick said this week that they are no longer going to be accepting orders from the United States that will ship from China, because they have to figure out what is going on with the tariffs and how they're going to respond to it, or whatever. So those Anbernick handhelds that everyone seems to enjoy are just going to be unavailable for some period of time until they figure out how much more they're going to charge you. Logitech has raised prices on a lot of devices for, somewhere around 20% in some cases. We talked about the RetroTink being unavailable for order in the United States for a period of time. The list is growing on all that stuff, especially smaller companies making these kind of bespoke, cool retro devices. They are just not going to sell them in the US. Your friends over at PlayStation, perhaps realizing that everyone was focused on a different price increase, have raised pricing for PlayStation Plus in Canada. This is according to videogameschronicle.com. The cost of a 12-month PlayStation Plus Essential subscription will go from $95 to $110. If you want extra, that'll go from $154.99 to $189.99. And premium, the highest tier of PlayStation Plus, will go from $190 to $225, which is $35. That's in Canadian money, which I assume is worth more than the American dollar at this point. Who can say? The Star Wars strategy game has finally been officially announced. This was something that I guess, word on it had leaked out a while ago via like LinkedIn profiles and some leaked screenshots and such. But the game is called Star Wars Zero Company. Electronic Arts will be doing the publishing. Respawn is working on this along with a company called BitReactor. BitReactor is a relatively newish studio started up by some folks that were at Firaxis beforehand, as well as other studios, but Firaxis is probably the relevant information here, because when you look at these screenshots, you go, oh shit, they're making an XCOM. It looks really cool. It's a cool looking trailer. Yeah, I don't know. Again, not a Star Wars guy, but it looks pretty cool, and I am down for some more XCOM. So, this was announced, I guess, in Japan at the Star Wars Celebration, which is a celebration of Star Wars, I guess. A celebration of the new Star Wars products they're going to be bringing you over the next calendar year, I suppose. Clone Troopers, Astromechs, and even a Jedi are included in the various operatives and classes that you will have at your disposal. There's some quotes and stuff that Video Games Chronicle has on this. While in the field, members of Zero Company will forge bonds between them to unlock powerful combat synergies that can turn the tide of battle. So it sounds like that's maybe like a veterancy concept, that if you have your like characters in the field together, they will eventually do a Fire Emblem and get better together. Maybe can they get married? Are we going full Fire Emblem here or no? No? Okay. Looks neat. You should check out. You should go look at it. If you are like me and you've been like, man, it'd be cool if they made another XCOM game, and then you realize like, they're never gonna make another one until they go and reboot it all over again. Then you should maybe give this trailer a look, because it's definitely got some of those vibes to it. This is look. This is not the weirdest movie licensing story that I have reported over the decades. Like, video game properties get optioned for films all the time, and they never come to pass. This one, I don't know. This one has there's a screenwriter on board already, like all this other stuff. So, it will probably get further than some of the kind of half-assed treatments that I've seen or heard about over the years. OutRun is the latest Sega property to get its own movie adaptation. Deadline is reporting on this. Sources tell Deadline that the studio is developed as Universal is the studio specifically. Sources tell Deadline that the studio is developing a feature adaptation of Sega's iconic arcade video game OutRun, with Michael Bay attached to direct and Sydney Sweeney on board to produce. What? Jason Rothwell will pen the script. He has worked on, they say his recent credits are Polar and Arachnid, which are probably movies. Those sound like those could be the names of movies. Sure. There's not much to, like, this story is funny too, because even Deadline is trying to like stretch out, like, what the fuck are the, there's no detail on this, but it's not like OutRun has some rich history of story to pull from. So, here's their paragraph trying to fucking tell you what OutRun is. And, all right. Plot details are vague. Sega's OutRun series is a franchise that originated from some of the most successful arcade games in the world during the 1980s. The game pioneered a new genre of driving games and spawned an electronic music subgenre aptly called OutRun. Ugh. Like, yeah, like, sure. There is, yeah, so kind of in the post vaporwave, whatever, like, there as it became way more aesthetic than I'm not even gonna. Yes, there are people that refer to like that, but I see it more used as like a reference to the visual aesthetic of the check out our fucking neon sunset horse shit that got like run into the ground all over again. And like this kind of like, yeah, post Kavinsky, like this is a bad way for them to, like, this feels like Deadline read a Wikipedia page and took it at face value and like, oh yeah, it's a musical subgenre, OutRun. And like, yeah. The only people that I think the only people, and again, I've not done all the research on this, but I feel like the only people that have ever referred to music as OutRun, meaning the genre, they're assholes. They have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. even if they made the music and decided to call it that, it's just like, no, guys, no. This is not how you. This is no. So I found that to be a very funny sentence in this, as just like, you could just, it's just synthwave. It's not, there's no. And so now it makes me wonder if they're going to make this movie, and because they think like, oh, well, it's also a musical genre, if they're going to have like a bunch of like terrible, yes, exactly, like a bunch of like fake city pop or something, like what are they, it's fucking maniacal, dude. It's fucking maniacal. Like, what are we doing? There's nothing good can come of this. Nothing good can come of this getting put together. Anyway, they claim they're going to make an OutRun movie. I don't think that's a good idea, but whatever. I mean, what is OutRun about? It's about people driving fast in a car. They've made movies about less. and called it whatever, right? Like, it's fine. Like, you know, and it's about a race. Like, you know, to be clear, like, OutRun has people waving flags in it. It is not people running from the cops. It's not like OutRun is not about outrunning the police. It is about outrunning a timer and deciding if you're going to go left or right. Like, it's not, but I just, my gut tells me that they are going to look at the words outrun and go, well, clearly they're outrunning something. And that it's going to, they're going to place some stakes upon whatever this race or drive or whatever is in ways that will not honor the spirit of actual fucking outrun. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe it'll just be like, I don't know, we're driving. I brought my lady with me. Oh, fuck, we rolled the car. Like, what, you know, like Act 2, we rolled the car. What are we going to do? Will Sydney Sweeney, I mean, Sydney Sweeney's going to produce. Will Sydney Sweeney sit in the passenger seat of a Ferrari for this? I don't know, man. Like, you know, you put Michael Bay on a thing, you assume it's just going to be like some gritty, vague crime thing or whatever. Or yes, we've got to win the race to pay off a crime debt or, you know, something, right? I don't know. You know, it's such a thin concept. And like, again, like, look, man, OutRun is an absolute classic, a huge release. When we look back upon the history of video games, OutRun is a massive game. I'm more of a hang-on kind of guy. I'm more of an Outrider Crisis kind. Like, if I got to listen to some fucking music, I'm more of an Outrider Crisis kind of guy, man. I'm more of a super hang-on. Like OutRun's fine, but it does not have a fucking Outrider Crisis in it, even a little bit. But OutRun is, you know, it's OutRun. So I see why it would be a property that maybe you would think to license in some way, especially as Sega has gotten more and more aggressive about trying to get its properties out there into films, kind of post Sonic the Hedgehog. And there's been, you know, in Minecraft, like the story from Deadline does note that, like, hey, in the wake of the Minecraft movie opening really big, and also people, you know, a lot of people watching the Last of Us TV show, then, hey, you know, you're going to see more video game properties getting licensed in the wake of that. And yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense from that perspective. Insofar as, like, I think, like, Hollywood is always optioning and licensing and you know, like, doing all of this stuff that then never gets made. I mean, you know, like, whatever happened to the Asteroids movie? When's that coming out? They licensed all that shit too. I mean, they licensed Crazy Taxi got optioned at some point as well, which I think there's a little bit more meat on the bone of something like Crazy Taxi than there is with OutRun. And maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. Like OutRun is really just an open, you know, they're like, look over the history of film and the number of movies that have been about people driving cars fast and doing cool shit. Like, you don't need much more than that, you know? Like, should we go watch Vanishing Point instead? Like, yeah, probably. But in lieu of that, maybe we'll see an OutRun movie someday. I hope that they, like, the soundtrack should just be like a Judgment Night style. Like, we're taking all of these bands and we're pairing them up with rappers, but like, it should be just like, we're taking all of these bands and then we're making quote unquote OutRun versions of their songs from the popular musical subgenre OutRun. God damn it. Fuck. Oh, people. I don't ask for much. I don't ask for anything, but don't. There's a culture at play here that is not being understood. when it comes to all right. I cannot get laughing mad about the subgenre of OutRun music all over again. We'll be here all day. Fuck, man. All right, that's gonna do it for the news. Unless anything happened over the last 20 minutes, I don't even know. Let's go look. No, man. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. If you want to send in some emails to me, again, it's podcast@guard.bike. That is the only email address. You can send emails wherever you want. You type whatever you want in that box. But if you want your emails read on the podcast, that is the only address that will reach me. Bobby from Texas, who was so convinced that that was his name that he sent in a second email to say, also, this is Bobby in Texas. Writes in and wondering about the future of video games, as we all are. I'm curious on your thoughts about how Xbox is going to affect the gaming world in 5 to 10 years. Specifically, unless Nintendo can come up with a radical new thing like they do, does it make sense for them to not make yet another handheld and just make a client and games for Windows/Xbox? By the time the Switch 3 would launch in another 8-ish years, the handheld space is going to be completely saturated with not only good Windows machines, but also good Linux machines that run Windows games. In order to compete in the market, that means time and energy spent on development and production and creates another barrier to entry for people to get their games. Or am I wrong? And is the cut that Nintendo gets from third-party devs in their shop making it all worthwhile? So this is kind of a muddy question because, it's kind of asking about like this idea of if everything is an Xbox and we get all these different gaming handhelds and all these other kind of like more open platforms out there on the market, will Nintendo make new hardware? Now, obviously, trying to predict what Nintendo will do with hardware next time out when we are, 2 months away from them launching hardware is crazy, right? Because the amount of things that can change over the next decade is very difficult to predict. Not just from a technological standpoint, but from a societal one, from an economical one. If the economy goes into recession at certain points in this cycle, then that's going to delay things, and they'll try to stretch this generation out a little bit further because they want to wait until people have money to buy a new console if they can swing it, right? So there's different little pieces that will affect this stuff that we can talk about, because it's stuff that we're kind of facing a little bit right now to a certain extent. So that stuff will cast some kind of shadow over things for a little while. Hopefully just a little while. Jesus Christ. But if you're asking me, do I think that Nintendo will just become a third-party publisher because there will be so many other devices out there that why would they bother making their own? And the answer is, that's something they could have done 20 years ago if they wanted to. They didn't need to launch a GameCube if they didn't want to. The GameCube is not that different from a PlayStation 2. It's not that different from the original Xbox. If Nintendo wanted out, they could have done it then. And they could do it every generation. They could make that choice. But they don't. They don't. And I think it's been worth it for them to continue to try to make devices that are tailored to the games that they make. Their investors even sometimes get on them and be like, how come you're not bringing your games to the PC or to phones was the common refrain, as you would have people stand up in investor meetings or submit questions that are just like, why are you not putting Mario on the phone? And then they did, and no one wanted it. Which, to be fair, they did not. I don't think Super Mario Run is a good game, and so that doesn't help. But hey, Pokemon Go, is a big deal, and the Pikmin game less so. Animal Crossing kind of came and went. So they have dipped their toes into the phone thing. But I don't think, I don't think there's like a reason for them to stop making hardware. I think that running their own shop and being a third-party publisher, especially these days when, I think a third party is really probably doing a little bit better than maybe it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, for Nintendo, even if it is kind of, segmented up into, it seems like there's some haves and have-nots when it comes to publishing on the Switch. And the haves are doing really well. The have-nots, not so much. I don't really see a great reason for Nintendo to stop making hardware. If we make the assumption that, like, yeah, let's say that, like, and it's not necessarily like your Bobby here is kind of framing this as something that would be as a result of what Microsoft will do with the Xbox brand in terms of spreading it out across a lot of different devices, and some of those being cloud devices, some of those being, effectively PCs that will run games natively, and, what does it all mean, and where does it all go from here? I don't think that that's necessarily something that's going to completely break the market and saturate it in such ways that, like, Nintendo would come along and go like, oh, it'd be crazy for us to even make a handheld because all these other ones are out here and they're so successful. Like, I don't necessarily think that having a growing market for handheld PCs is going to dramatically change things. I think it will dramatically change things for availability of PC games, and I think it will dramatically change things for what the Xbox market looks like and what it is, and what Xbox hardware is going forward. But I don't think that that's going to magically make every other game, console manufacturer go like, they crushed it. They knocked it out of the park. We're not even going to bother. They will bother. Whether it's for the 30% that they make on their shop fees or, whatever that number is, or if it's for, hey, we want a bespoke device that does a specific thing that our games do that these devices will not do. Keep in mind that, of the Switch 2 games they've shown so far, like, there is a number of them that do some kind of Joy-Con thing. Not necessarily always a motion control thing, but you've got some mouse work in there. You've got some options for turning it sideways to play split screen. Like, personally, for me, none of those are like amazing big deals, but they are differentiators that, an off the shelf, whatever, quote unquote Xbox device would not be able to do. And so Nintendo would be locked in very much to just making games like everyone else makes at that point, which maybe they would want to do, and maybe they would not. And it kind of depends on what happens with, chip designs and development and thermal power and how big can we make a handheld. And, maybe Nintendo gets to a point where they're like, okay, we really, we did this handheld thing for a long time and it's great. And maybe they will suddenly have a good reason to not make another device like that. Like, hey, we've got another innovation. It's a console that hooks up to a TV, and we'll also sell you the Switch 2 for another 20 years because that's our handheld platform now. Like, there's always the possibility that they figure out something along those lines, or change up the format of it just so in ways that iterate on that concept, or break that concept in ways that, doesn't work for whatever they do next. But a lot of that comes down, I think, to the games that they want to make and how they want to make them. And I think right now what they're doing with the Switch 2 makes sense. When we look at what sort of availability, or, like where could they go? Where could Nintendo go right now? Meaning right now, meaning a handful of years ago when they had to start making decisions about chipsets and whatever else, right? I think that what they did is a very normal and natural thing, based on trying to develop a console during a pandemic and during like very extreme duress on the or very extreme strain on the supply chain. And, you know, they watched it become difficult for them to make the Switch 1. You know, and so in the middle of all that, trying to design a Switch 2 and trying to figure out what that's going to be and all of that, I think that the console or the device that they're making, the power of, that it will have available, like all of that stuff makes a lot of sense given what the options were, right? Unless they're going to go out there and spend 10 times as much money as they already did developing completely custom parts and, you know, and whatever else. And that's assuming that they would be able to develop custom parts that would be meaningfully different than the ones that they chose in terms of like whether it's capabilities or, you know, drain on battery life if they want to make a handheld, or how much heat does it generate, you know, like the kind of standard parameters that all of this stuff has to operate in, especially when you're making a handheld device. I don't know that there's things that they could have done dramatically different that would have affected that part of the console. It would be more like, I don't know, man, we made it have 2 screens, or I don't know, we you know, which again, you have to source those screens, the supply chain, blah, blah, blah. You know, it could be like, hey, we put a 3rd Joy-Con at the bottom of it and it's got a Z trigger on it. You know, they could make a weird fucking N64 handheld. Who knows? You know, there's silly shit that they could do that doesn't necessarily impact the overall chipset or the power, or the, you know, doesn't have a huge knock on the battery life or whatever. There's things they could have done on that front, right? If they wanted to go down that road. But I think the games that they're currently making and the games that they're likely to make in the next, you know, foreseeable future, I think the Switch form factor worked really well for them, and there's no real reason to deviate from it. So, you know, like I get why people are saying, oh, the Switch 2 seems a little boring or a little safe or whatever. But I think, you know, again, you're looking at a console that was designed and developed during a lot of uncertainty around the supply chain through that pandemic, and all of that sort of stuff, right? And it gives them a platform to start with that they can then say, oh, here's our smaller one, here's our Switch 2 Lite that doesn't have detachable Joy-Cons, or here's our OLED version of it, or, you know, like it gives them a spot to, you know, if they want to wait a few years and then have different versions of it, they can do it. And I think that they can get away with it this time. You know, I think if it just became this was their new thing and they kept doing it forever, then yeah, you do start to have that question about like, why do I need to buy this device just to play Nintendo's games when I could be buying this more open device that does so much more? And, you know, I think that's still a valid question. Right now, it's just a valid question to a very small subset of players, because ultimately the number of humans out there that know that a Steam Deck exists is still relatively low compared to the gargantuan Q rating of fucking Mario, you know? So give it another decade. Yeah, maybe the handheld PC sector takes off in a dramatic way and it's a whole mainstream thing. But there's so much that would have to happen for that to be truly massively mainstream in terms of games that don't crash and devices that you can guarantee, yes, this runs this game acceptably well. Like, remember that the Steam Deck is, it is awesome. I love the Steam Deck. But they still have to put icons in their store that says, these are verified for it. These ones, not so much. We don't know. Maybe it'll run great. Maybe it won't. I don't know. It's still a very kind of tinkery sort of device, you know? And for all of Microsoft's talk about what they want to do to Windows to make it work better with that sort of handheld form factor, they have to prove it. And then they have to make sure that people actually want it. And all of that sort of, that it's priced right, that it's, you know, there's a kind of a road to make that thing mainstream that, like, they might not get it right, you know? Like, for all we know, Microsoft will come along and say, here's the version of Windows 11 that we think will run great on these handhelds, and maybe it will be fucking terrible. And maybe they will swing and miss, and people will go, well, fuck this. This whole segment is dead. Or it'll just be like, it's for the enthusiast. It's for people who want a Steam Deck. It's for people who want to, like install games on this thing and not mess with it. Or there'd be people that want to fuck around with Linux or whatever. Yeah, I mean, this is still the company that put out Windows 8, like, ironically, Windows 8 in some ways, at least conceptually, might be better for what they're going for, but it is still a company that has made massive mistakes on their OS over the years and are continuing to make them, like all the time. Like Windows 11, I like it, but I get why people don't. And so it's very easy to see a world where, they go through this process of like saying, hey man, here's the version of Windows 11, or here's our kind of consoleized version of Windows that we think is really strong for these handhelds. And maybe they'll do it and it'll be a terrible experience. It's entirely possible. So until we kind of cross those bridges, I think it's way too soon to really be having massive conversations about how this is going to take over the world and how this is going to be gaming and this is the way forward. I think it's a very possible path. And I think that there's a lot of potential in these devices. And I think there's a lot of potential in a streamlined consoleized version of Windows 11. But they have to do it. And I don't know that I trust them enough right now to give them the benefit of the doubt to say, oh, they'll do it and it'll be great. Like, we will see. I hope that they do a great job with that. I would love to see this sector take off. I would love to see this stuff line up in a way that, that they manage to capture this and turn it into something very, very real. Because I think that would be exciting. But we're a long way from there right now today. There are people working on solving this problem and they seem smart, and I hope that they achieve that goal, and we'll see where it goes. But like I said, there's no guarantee that they will get there. Ian writes in and asks, what was up with GameSpy? It was hosting online servers and it had some sort of editorial site. My family only had dial-up in the early 2000s. I remember seeing it on some PC games, but I never interacted with it personally. Yeah, so GameSpy was originally QuakeSpy, and it was a shareware server browser for Quake. And so you would install QSpy, and I paid for a registered copy of QSpy because I don't fuck around. Because I wanted to see Quake servers without having to launch Quake. And so it was basically a launcher for Quake that would pass the parameters to automatically connect you to a server, and it would go from there. And so it was just a very easy way to get into a Quake game. After that, they started to support more and more games, and they started to build APIs for like, hey, if you want to integrate GameSpy, once it supported more than Quake, they had to rename it. And once they got to that point, it's like, okay, well, let's build some stuff out. They started doing licensing deals to license GameSpy technology into various PC games, and basically take the server browser part of it from the game and just say, oh, you can do this. And so some games would even come with like branded versions of the GameSpy client that would, basically give you a server browser, would ping the master server and give you a list. At the same time, yeah, there was some sort of, I don't know when the website started up, but like, remember that this is all kind of born out of the Quake community and the types of news sites that grew out of that Quake community. So you had GameSpy, but this was kind of, this was something that came out after like Blues News or Redwood's Quake News, whatever Redwood's site was called. And so you had a variety of sites that were devoted to PC gaming news, specifically around shooters. And so it was like, here's the latest mods, here's this whatever the hell this capture the flag thing is for Quake seems pretty cool. And so you could go to Planet Quake and you could look up, you know, what the latest news in Quake mods happened to be that week. And you know, those sites started covering a little bit more, and a little bit more like Shack News kind of came out of this, that same sort of ecosystem. Because what was that called? Was that like, what was that, like Quake Holio's Shack or whatever the fuck? Yeah, there's some fucking weird lineage there that I'm probably mangling a little bit, but Quake Spy was part of that overall community of like tools and mods and, you know, like all of that sort of shit, that then kind of turned into a business on the back end of it. And so they started licensing that technology into other PC games. And it got to a point where they eventually had some kind of tech stack that was occasionally of value to console developers. And so you would have console games that were integrating part of the GameSpy like API for like server browser stuff or whatever it was, like the kind of client server, master server architecture that Quake had used. Like they had found ways to build something similar, I guess. And so GameSpy became a client that supported some variety of games, you know, like it had a list of supported games. It wasn't like you could just magically make it support whatever. And then, yeah, then the editorial side of it continued to grow. And then eventually, like, GameSpy became completely fucking obsolete. Like, no one needed it anymore. There were other APIs and other pieces of middleware and other tools that you could use instead of that. You know, developers were building their own server browsers kind of went away, really, you know, in favor of the Xbox Live approach of, like, quick matches and ranked matches and custom matches and whatever else. And so that end of GameSpy's business went away. The editorial side of it got sold to IGN at some point. And they were still running it for a while. And then they eventually shut that part of it down. But yeah, it was originally Quake Spy. Like I'm staring at my email right now. I should look. July 6th, 1997. That was the day that I registered QSpy. Thank you for registering QSpy, the ultimate tool for sniffing out the best Quake servers on the internet. Here is your registration key that you will enter into QSpy on the registration menu. And then it lists my email address at the time, as well as my key for QSpy. Registration entitles you to free upgrade to future versions of QSpy 5.x, membership on the Team QSpy mailing list, technical support via email, bugs@quakespy.com, and our undying promise that we will crank out new versions of QuakeSpy. Please keep your key secret. Registered features such as the chat system may lock out multiple users attempting access with the same key. This isn't cause for alarm. Just keep your key private. Yeah, I'm currently staring at my QSpy registration key. July 6th, 1997. That is when I decided to buy QuakeSpy. And yeah, it was a vital tool for that era of gaming. Like if you wanted to play first person shooters and you wanted to play Quake, like you kind of needed that to find servers. And so that is, I guess, what was up with GameSpy. Chris from Canton, Ohio writes in and says, I enjoyed your recent Hall of Fame video on Picross 3D, and you talked a bit about how Tetris is a common choice for the best game of all time, though it's always listed like it represents the platonic ideal of Tetris, despite how many versions are out there that are not the greatest form of what makes Tetris great. So what version of Tetris would you choose as the definitive version of Tetris to represent why it should be the best game of all time? I think Game Boy Tetris is up there on that list pretty high. That would probably be think that's I think you're probably choosing two games at this point. You're showing the Game Boy version of Tetris and probably Tetris Effect, because it is such a kind of stylish version of Tetris, and you're kind of showing what else it could do. By choosing Game Boy Tetris, you're choosing a version that lets you play against another human player. Though I guess Tetris Effect did have some... It did put some competitive stuff in there somewhere, right? I would choose those. Obviously Tetris on Game Boy came out before the modern, like, rules changes that Tetris has gone through. But I do think that it's still probably the right choice. Because it's a definitive baseline Tetris game of its era. It's not like Tetris Battle Gaiden is a cool game, but it's too weird. Tetris 99 is awesome, but it's too weird. Tetranet is maybe my most played version of Tetris of all time, but also it's not official. Tetris the Grandmaster Ace is for lunatics and scary people, and it's not a great choice. So yeah, I think that probably Game Boy Tetris, because it is such a recognizable... It's when people say, like, oh, the music from Tetris, like, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the Game Boy version of Tetris that people have tried to duplicate over and over again. Or if they're talking about the music from Tetris, they're talking about the soundtrack to Tetris on the CDI, which is a whole separate thing. But yeah, Tetris Effect, probably just for the variety that it brings, and it shows what you can do with something that is a relatively simple concept like Tetris. Tetris Effect takes it in so many different directions visually that I think that's probably one you would show, but also Game Boy Tetris with a link cable specifically to show that end of the game. Chris from Leeds writes in and says, was Nintendo's licensing program actually necessary? What was the actual point of it? Prevailing wisdom was that they wanted to stop the market from being flooded with low-quality games as a reaction to the video game crash, but I feel the narrative has changed on that now, and the crash was more caused by retailers overestimating and not understanding their market. In the decades since, we've seen that Nintendo, much more than other console makers, wants to control what's on their platform. Is this all the licensing program was actually for? So we're talking about the NES days here. The official Nintendo seal of quality and licensing games and all of that. So that was done specifically, my understanding of that was always that was something they were doing for retailers to ease the fears that retailers had. And it's a perception is reality thing. Like, yes, we know now, the crash was not a crash, and it only happened in North America, and it only affected console games, and computer games were going to take over anyway, probably just by virtue of that's where the technology was going for a period of time there anyway. But retailers didn't want to touch video games at all. They were like, after they bought too many Atari 2600 games and ended up having to blow out cartridges for like $3 a piece or whatever, and all of that other shit, like, retailers wanted some, or at least Nintendo felt that retailers would be a little more at ease if they came along and said, we're not going to let it happen like that shit. And so the seal of quality, the licensing program, everything that Nintendo did in those early days, like, remember that part of that was you may only ship X number of games in a year. And so that's why Konami would have Ultra games, and why Acclaim and LJN kind of existed. You would have these other names, that pop up so that they could have twice as many slots, I guess, by having an end around on the system a little bit. That was always my understanding of why something like an Ultra Games had to exist. But ultimately, it was put in place specifically to calm the nerves of retailers who didn't want to touch video games at all and say, hey, we have this program in place. We are only going to take licensed developers, so you don't have to worry. Like, we're going to assure a level of quality, and also we're going to stop them from putting out 1,000 games a month to prevent the shovelware, like, dumping of games on the system. And I think that was something that retailers very much wanted to hear, and it helped calm their nerves about the very idea of video games, because for retailers, they were like, oh, these things are a fad, it's done, we don't want to touch it. And so, that's part of why Nintendo had a robot and a light gun and the licensing program, because those were all things that they could put in place and go like, look at this fun toy. Look at this fun toy robot. Look at this cool toy robot. Also, it plays video games, but it's a fun robot. Aren't you entertained by our entertainment system? It's fun. And we're also going to stop people from putting out 1,000 games a month on this thing. And I think that worked. But like, once it took off, right? And no one cared about any of that shit anymore. It wasn't like, as long as the games were selling, they didn't really care. But, Nintendo obviously wanted to have a hold on cartridge manufacturing and all of that stuff. So the licensing thing eventually became a way for them to control retailers a little bit, because it put them in a position where they were like, hey, Nintendo is really hot right now. You don't want to be locked out of our next, popular games. So you better not sell any unlicensed video games in your store. And so they could use that to ice out, the shit that like Codemasters and Chimerica, all of the colors reads, they use that to kind of stop people from getting shelf space for their unlicensed garbage. And a lot of those unlicensed games are bad. Tengen made some good stuff. I mean, whatever, man. RBI Baseball was an unlicensed video game. It's one of the greatest games on the whole platform. But in a general sense, most of the unlicensed games, I think, are quite bad. At least the ones that I've seen so far. And, as far as like controlling what's on the platform, you say in the decades since, we've seen that Nintendo, much more than other console makers, want to control what's on their platform. Is this all the licensing program is actually for? I disagree with that in terms of Nintendo controlling what's on their platform. Nintendo has the same basic, like, their structure for approving developers is not that different from the self-publishing stuff that you see on the PlayStation and the stuff you see it via ID at Xbox. Like, the eShop has a lot of fucking trash on it. And how that stuff gets approved and how it makes its way to the store is a longer story than I am able to get into at this time. But yeah, it's yes, they you see a lot of developers shipping a lot of like really questionable shit onto the eShop. And the eShop is built in a way that it doesn't do a good job of filtering some of that stuff out. Because of the way they made it and because of the choices they made around it. And hopefully that's something that they do better at when it comes to curating or finding ways to present the information about here's what's on the store in a way that does a better job of putting better games at the top of the stack. More viable games, more interesting games, I guess I would say, not even necessarily better. It's like it's a hard language, it's a hard line to walk, right? Nintendo doesn't necessarily want to be in the position of saying, hey, we're the arbiters of everything that goes on our platform. They don't want that responsibility per se. But they do want to have some hold on it in terms of like, if you meet these requirements, then we're not going to stop you from shipping games on this platform. And while these requirements then require you to make a game that doesn't crash or, like doesn't crash often or, whatever their requirements are for getting through that process, none of those requirements are the game must be good. It's like the game must not have full penetration in it. The game must not have, dramatic crash bugs. You cannot use the word PlayStation in it. It's like regular stuff, right? Regular stuff that anyone running a platform would probably have similar things in place. But at the end of the day, they can't have a system in place that says we don't think this game is good, and so we're not going to let it on our platform. Like they can't. No one can do that, really. It'd be kind of neat if they did, but it opens up a fucking nasty door of just like, oh, here's this game you developed. We think it actually sucks, and we think you should not make it at all. And you know, they want to have that level of like concept approval over every game that comes to their platform, like for the full decade of the platform. Like maybe in the beginning, you know, there's definitely some tighter reins on what gets announced when and all of that, and who's developing for the platform and who's a licensed developer and who isn't. And you know, those things are a little more tightly held at the beginning of a generation, but once things get rolling, they're just gonna go, you know. And as long as your game ain't hurting nobody, then theoretically they'll let you ship it, I guess, right? Mark writes in and says, do you think there's a window for a new battle royale to hit the market? I know for the past few years it's generally been treated as an oversaturated genre. I feel like Fortnite players are happy with the game, but I constantly see Apex and Warzone players complaining about the state of those games. Apex has also seen a drop-off in players recently. Is now the time for a new battle royale? I mean, Ubisoft seems to think so. Like, apparently they've got yet another fucking battle royale in development somewhere. Do I think there's a window for a new battle royale to hit the market? Sure. You know, yeah, Apex is maybe not what it used to be. We'll see what they end up doing with that franchise, if they want to make another, you know, if they're going to make a sequel to it, or what they'll try to do to turn it around, or whatever. But what is that game? Like, I think you have to have an idea. You can't just say, like, we made a shooter and it's a good one. Like, you have to have something cool in it, like BMX bikes. Hear me out. But you need to have a hook for your game. You need to have something that I think sets it apart at this point. I think Warzone has done an okay job. Like, Warzone overhauled its inventory system a while ago and simplified and streamlined some of those things in ways that I think benefit the game overall. People seem excited that the original map is back there, so I don't know, you know, I don't know how they're doing player count wise. I will say anecdotally, I have played a little bit more Battle Royale there in Warzone than I have over the past year or so. But I think, you know, yeah, you have to ask the question, like, what do you want your game to be? Is it going to be like, hey, we're doing, you know, like maybe there's room for, let's say, a more hardcore military focused Battle Royale, specifically because, like, you know, you don't really hear a lot of discussion about PUBG anymore. So maybe that user base is a little vulnerable. Or maybe that user base is largely on phones at this point. And so it's, you know, like maybe on console, there's room for something that's a little more serious or something, right? But serious doesn't sell skins. So that only takes you so far, right? Before you're like, I don't know, man, you can play as Felix the Cat in our Battle Royale game just to give us $18 for this skin. So yeah, I think it's just, there's sort of I don't know what you do. Like, do I think that someone could make a game that we would call a Battle Royale game and it could go on to be a very popular game? Yes. I think that, you know, yeah, like Apex is probably a little more vulnerable these days than it has been. And so as a result of that, you probably have room to do something new. PUBG obviously still huge overseas in various parts in pockets of the world on various platforms. Like the mobile version is fucking huge. So I would not say, I would say you are less likely to punch through with a mobile battle royale game these days than you would be with maybe a really good PC and console game. But I don't know what that game is, man. I think you got to figure out some kind of hook for it. And I don't know what, yeah, I don't really know what the twist on the formula would be at this point, because we've seen a lot of games come and go that have tried a lot of those twists, right? Like, okay, well, what if we made one that was way more car based, and we tried to do like a car combat focused battle royale game, or what if we tried to do something that was way more game show like, and like very deliberately kind of focused in that direction. And what if we do sci-fi? What if we do this type of weapon? With this type, what if we do cartoonish wrestling style melee combat? There's been a lot of Forza Horizon, which is coming to PlayStation pretty soon here. They have a battle royale mode with cars, because why not? So yeah, I do think that, yes, someone could make one if it was popular and it was marketed well, and and they had more than a little bit of luck at their back, then yeah, sure, you could make something stick. But I can't sit here and tell you, like, here's the exact segment, here's the hole that you need to fill, and it needs to be filled with this type of game. Dude, no idea. No idea, man. I think that's a hard one. But it'd be interesting to see someone try something else at this stage. I hope that Titanfall 3 is not this. There's been like a resurgence of talk about the idea of a Titanfall 3. And I hope that this is not their solution for the Apex player drop-off, is like, what if we did a battle royale with mechs? You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. I do tend to think that, sure, if the right game came along, and that's always true to a certain extent, but I think right now, yeah, we've seen some games sort of maybe run their course, or maybe fall on a little bit of hard times with their communities and what have you, that you could see a world in which Apex has maybe fallen off just enough to perhaps leave an opening. But I think it's again, I think it's a very difficult hole to fill. Like people have done multiple melee games, and you have like your Naraka blade points and stuff like that, but could you do like a medieval, someone surely has done this by now, right? Some kind of like just straight up knights in shining armor, knights in filthy dirty armor, having sword fights in the middle of fucking some massive circle or something, right? Like someone's probably done that. But like, I don't know, melee combat, I think it will only get you so far anyway. People like guns, it turns out. People want to shoot each other with guns. Alex from Framingham writes in, I've been thinking about how so many video game reviews will criticize a game by saying it, quote, doesn't add anything new, and or that it does things that others have done before. While I think there will always be cases where a game is significantly derivative of another, I wonder if we're reaching a point where it's no longer helpful to knock a game like Avowed, Indiana Jones, or Assassin's Creed Shadows for being reminiscent of other games that came before, despite being very high quality. There are just so many games now that I'm not sure it's fair to treat mechanical innovation as a simple make or break critique. What do you think? So I think that some of this is actually kind of mitigated by the frequency with which we are seeing big games. So I think if we're talking specifically in the kind of AAA space, right, or the kind of the big full price console and PC release, let's call it. I think that those games are few and far between enough that I think that it is like that as a criticism is less valuable than it used to be, because it used to be like something would get hot, right? Like Call of Duty would get hot, let's say 2007. Call of Duty becomes the biggest thing in the world. What do we see for the next 5 to 10 years? A bunch of fucking dog shit first-person shooters that are, you know, like, hey, we got Team Deathmatch also. We're doing that too. And some of those games are at best like okay, and you're like, oh yeah, they made this, but like, why would you play this over this? And so I think that we don't see nearly as much. Yeah, Homefront. Jesus. Homefront. We just don't see as many games coming out anymore. You know, like games are taking longer to develop, like games are existing in a different way now. And so like when I think about something like Avowed, and I think about the criticism of Avowed saying that it doesn't add anything new, like, okay, maybe not. Like, I don't know that I fully agree with that either. Like, there's nuance to it that is going to be lost on people who are not playing it at length, for sure. And they will be the ones that will sweep it under the rug and go like, this is just another one of those. When was the last time someone put out another one of those that was actually good, though? That's kind of the thing, right? And I think this ties into this other conversation we're having a lot about games where people say like, it feels like a PS2 game, and they mean it in a very positive way, right? I think those two things kind of coming together, it's kind of the same criticism. It's the same critique, positive or negative, right? It is like, hey, this is a lot like one of these, but also they don't make a lot of those anymore, and it's awesome that I get another one that is good. You know? And Indiana Jones, like, I don't know that I would say that Indiana Jones is like widely derivative of, you know, like if it's taking its inspirations from, like, it's a light version, you know, like I have called it an immersive sim before, but I mean that in the lightest way possible, right? Like, it's not a full sim. It's, you know, let's not be crazy, but like, it's more than just a first-person shooter. It's more than just the Wolfenstein guys made another game and now you have a hat, right? There's a lot more happening in that game and a lot more systems at play. And you could look at those systems and go like, it's like they made a bad Hitman. Like, no, I think it's more like they made a light Hitman where they took the elements from a Hitman-like game and used it to great effect with a character that it makes sense to do that with. Indiana Jones. You know? And I think that stuff is like, are there aspects of that game that are certainly derivative of other games? Of course. It's 2025. We've been making these games. They've been making these games for a very long time. But also, it's okay that a game like Indiana Jones stands on the shoulders of giants and also comes up with enough of its own twists and turns to feel like something genuinely new along the way. So yeah, I don't know that I necessarily agree with the overall. I don't think that the idea that a game doesn't add anything new, I don't think it holds the same weight that it did 20 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even. Again, because I think game development has changed and game releases have changed, and we are not seeing as many publishers publish as many games. Everyone's catalogs have shrunk in size every year in terms of just the raw number of games that they're willing to put out in a year. The number of publishers that are out there putting out games at that scale and scope is a much smaller number than it used to be, especially if you collate all of the Microsoft-owned shit under one roof instead of saying, well, there's Activision and there's Bethesda. It's like, no, it's all the same thing at this point. There are just fewer companies out there doing this type of work. And so I think that when we think about those games, like, again, I think even the people who complain about Ubisoft open world games and map bloat and map barf and all of that, I think even those complaints are a little harder to stick on a game because there are fewer of them. You know what I mean? Like, in a world where there's a new Assassin's Creed game coming out every year or every 18 months, every 2 years, you know, yeah, in conjunction with, hey, here's another Far Cry. Hey, here's another one of these. Here's a Ghost Recon Wildlands. Here's this. In a world where Ubisoft is barfing out games that then also have map barf, that's a much, much harder proposition than it is now. And different people are going to have different tolerances for that sort of stuff right now, right? You know, there's going to be some people that are still like, nah, I'm still not into it. But I, you know, like, I'll tell you what, the last Far Cry game, I thought I was going to be way more into than I ended up being, because I turned out I was not as far over the line as I thought I was. When that Far Cry game came out, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. You know what I could go for? Just some fucking open world shit. Just let me run around and fuck shit up. And then that game came out and I was like, I don't want to do any of this. What the fuck? Like, it was just like, it was like, oh my God. Like I am completely wrong about my current appetite for this style of game. And there will come a time somewhere down the line that enough time has passed that I will be into it all again. That I'll be like, yeah, okay, sure. I could be down for some of this. But I was not there yet. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a really neat fucking game. It is still one of those, and I'm playing it very slowly. Kind of on purpose, because when I play it for too many hours in one stretch, I start to feel that way again. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to fucking ride all the way over here and unlock this fucking fast travel point and do this. And I'm like, forget, I'll just, whatever. I'll come back to it later. And so I've been enjoying that in very short bursts. But I think, you know, again, I think that the critique does not hold as much water, even if you're someone who has played all of those games as they came out over the last 20 years. Because they're just not being released with the same frequency that they used to be. And so, like, I don't look at Avowed and go, like, I can't believe they just fucking made one of these. I think that's a crazy, like, again, no one is making them anymore. There was a time, kind of post-Oblivion, especially post-Skyrim, that you saw more and more developers trying to fucking put out games that were like, here's our first-person role-playing game. What was the, man, is it Two Worlds? Was that the franchise of those fucking things? Anyway, there's been a variety of games over the years that have tried to follow in those games' footsteps. We've seen this with Souls-like games, of course. Like, you know, games learning from Dark Souls and trying to be, we made the sci-fi Dark Souls. We made this Dark Souls. Like, of course, you know, there was a lot of that stuff. That came along over the years, you know? And I think that we've maybe punched through to the other side of that, to where maybe now people would be a little more receptive to we made the blank Dark Souls, because there are just fewer of them now. But it felt like there was such a huge rush of them for a while there. But now there is still a huge rush of them, but fucking From makes all of them. And half of them are multiplayer games now. I don't even know what the fuck's going on. But yeah, I think that the critique of, like, this game doesn't do anything new or doesn't add anything new is blunted ever so slightly, just by virtue of, like, there are not as many of these games coming out as there used to be. I wonder how much of the release date, because they didn't announce Oblivion, right? They said, check this thing out, it's out now. Do you think that the release timing of Oblivion was at all framed by, or at all informed by, the tale on Avowed? Do you think Avowed came out, they saw the number of people playing it? Do you think that they ever had any kind of, like, number in mind where they're like, okay, if our active players drops below this number, or we see that X number of percentage of players have finished the game and are no longer playing it, it's not one of their weekly active games, monthly active whatevers, like, do you think that they saw a certain, like, player count in mind for Avowed, and once people got what they were going to get out of it and moved on, they were like, all right, cool, spin up the Oblivion machine, and released it? Like, did Avowed find, because Avowed is kind of out of the conversation a little bit, right? And so in order to not step on Avowed at all, do you think that they ended up waiting off on Oblivion ever so slightly just to give it a little bit longer of a window. I don't mean to be fucking conspiratorial or anything like that. If anything, I look at that and go like, that seems like good business, except for the part where now they shipped an Oblivion remaster the same week as they're putting this Claire Obscure Expedition 33 game out that people seem excited about, but now everyone is just talking about Oblivion. It's sort of weird. I would be fucking bummed out if I were the developers of good old Expedition 33. Because that game looks neat. But it's a very different type of game, right? It's not necessarily like, hey, the same people are going to play those games. But yeah, I wonder, like, you know, because I think that Oblivion and Avowed are relatively similar games, right? So if you're managing the Xbox portfolio, if you're managing the Game Pass portfolio, and you're like, oh shit, Avowed had to push into this year. It's not going to make its original date. We're going to put it out, you know, and it came out when it came out. Do you then look at Oblivion and go, all right, like this could kind of ship whenever, because it's going to be ready here. We got this team finishing it up. It's just about ready. So we can kind of ship it. We can shift it around in this window ever so slightly. I mean, there were hours, you know, there's like a lot of footage of it that just got out. Like clearly Oblivion has been close, if not done, for a little while here, right? So do you think that they sat down and looked at Avowed and go, okay, well, we want to make sure that this has its time in the sun. So we're going to wait a month, like we're going to wait for it to cross this line on the player chart or whatever, and then we'll put this out. I think that would be a smart thing to do. I don't mean that as like a, and I don't mean that to say like, oh, Avowed failed, you know, like whatever, but like Avowed is a single player game. It's not about its monthly active users in that specific sense, right? It's not like, oh, it's a dead game. Like, who cares? People play it, they finish it, they move on. Or they play it, they don't finish it, and they move on. So do you wait and see and go like, okay, this is now done this, and so now we're gonna drop this? I think that if anything, they should do that. They should figure out, like, when people stop playing Oblivion, when people on Game Pass move on from Oblivion, if anything, they should figure out a new way, like a new batch of ways to market Avowed to them in the event that they didn't play it, because you might come away from Oblivion going like, that was cool that I got to play that again. I could sure go for some more of that. And Avowed is very much adjacent to that style of game. It's not, you know, it's not a one-to-one thing, but it's close enough. You know? If you liked this, you should try this. I don't know. That's what I would do. Tyler writes in and says, with the PlayStation 5 version of Indiana Jones adding the Xbox Live account system, it makes me wonder, could Microsoft now sneak Game Pass onto PlayStation? I'm sure Sony wouldn't allow a Game Pass app, but imagine this. Microsoft could add a free Game Pass version of Indiana Jones and other games to PSN. When you get to the start screen, you would be required to log into your Xbox Live account and verify your membership. This wouldn't work with the majority of the Game Pass library, but they could put all the Activision and Microsoft games currently on PS5 up and even sell a cheaper PS5 membership. Do you think this could work and make sense financially to Microsoft? I can't think of any reason Sony could deny this, as many free-to-play games require an account to play, like Fortnite. They could deny it because, like, okay. No one's sneaking anything onto the PlayStation Store. They're not going to backdoor their way into a Game Pass. Like, Sony's just going to go like, what the fuck are you doing? Well, no. What? No. Because they very much can. And Microsoft could sit there and point at like other free-to-play games that require an account and go, no, it's just like that. And they would go, no. No, that's not how any of this works. If you're putting a free-to-play game out, the expectation is that you're going to be monetizing in some other different way. Like, what? That is not how anyone does business. And no one at Sony is dumb enough to go like, I can't believe they snuck all these free games onto our platform. Oh, dang it. It's just not how any of this works. Like, it's not like it's not like a message board where you can try to argue with the moderators and go, but this person did this and the rules are this and the rules say this. Like, it's not, this is a business. This is like, no, they are business partners in a lot of ways with some of this stuff. They work together in ways that they are not competing. It's just not. None of this would work this way, ever in a million years, ever. If Microsoft wanted to do something like this, they would have to approach Sony and say, we want to do something that is like Ubisoft's subscription service on PlayStation. They would have to approach it from that perspective and say, we want to offer a subscription service on your platform the same way that Ubisoft does, the same way that EA does. We want to do that. And here's the games it would include. And we would like to do this. And it would be a subset of the games that are on Game Pass, because not all of those games, A, not all of those Game Pass games are on PlayStation, and B, some of the developers of the third-party games that are on Game Pass might not want their games to be part of a PlayStation subscription service. And also, it's highly, possible that Sony would not allow that, because those efforts then compete with Sony's own PlayStation Plus service. The existing Ubisoft services, sometimes those games end up on PlayStation Plus in different tiers, and like they do different deals for the different games, but by and large, those are all the games that Ubisoft owns and operates, and so it's a very different thing than Game Pass, which is open to all of these other third-party games. So if you're asking me, could Microsoft ever offer some kind of subscription service on PlayStation platforms for its own owned and operated games, I will tell you, yes, I think they could do that. I think it's entirely possible that they would do that down the line if it's something where they felt like the business made a lot of sense to them to do it that way. But I also don't think that they would grandfather in, I don't think Game Pass Ultimate would get you a PlayStation subscription. Because if they're going to start selling a subscription service on that platform, it's highly likely that Sony would want its cut of the money. And so it's not a case where you could probably just go sign up for Game Pass and then play these games on PlayStation without Sony getting involved in that business somehow. And I don't know what their existing relationship is with all other stuff, because it's probably like, oh, if this subscriber to your service plays X percentage, it's probably similar to what they do for cross-platform play and microtransactions, the policies that they came up with which are fucking insane in some ways, but the policies that Sony came up with for microtransaction sales, currency sales that happen on one platform but are spent on another, and some of the other weird cases that come up when you start to go down this road. Is maybe they could do something like that of like, oh, well, yeah, okay, if someone signs up to this Microsoft service and then they play Forza Horizon 5 for 100 hours on PlayStation, we think that we should get X percentage of that person's monthly fee, regardless of where they signed up for it. If they signed up for it here on PlayStation, then obviously we're going to get our cut there. But if they didn't, but they play here, we still want some of that. And I think that's probably how those sorts of conversations would go. So yeah, but no one's going to sneak anything onto someone else's platform like that and backdoor a subscription service onto, no. What I would like to see happen is more cross-save support for more of these games. For more of these Xbox games on PlayStation, be it Indiana Jones or what have you. It was really handy. And then, again, this is not a ton of users probably fall into this bucket, but enough of them do. It was really great to be able to move my Assassin's Creed Shadows save from PlayStation 5 to PC. And Ubisoft has been good about doing more and more cross-save stuff like that across their games. And it's been fucking awesome. And I was surprised that Indiana Jones did not do it. And I wonder if that is something that, Microsoft will eventually get on board with in a more realistic way, and in a more unified way. All of this is still relatively new to them, especially with Indiana Jones is technically a Bethesda game and not a Microsoft game. And so it's a whole separate thing, there's those little things along the way, right? But yeah, I like the ability to share saves in Assassin's Creed Shadows was awesome. Awesome. because that creates a scenario where, you know, and again, like, I don't think anyone would go buy multiple versions of a game, because I think that's straight up lunacy. And it probably makes more sense for Ubisoft because they do have a subscription service, right? Where it's like, oh, maybe you subscribe to that service and that results in you playing the PS5 version of Shadows. And then you're like, oh, I also want to play this on my Steam Deck. And you can, you know, and you can be that kind of cross-platform player with those games. It's now that I think about it, Ubisoft having their own service is probably why they developed that whole thing in the first place. I want to say that they rolled out some of that stuff right around the same time anyway. But yeah. Let's see here. If we have what else do we have here emails wise? Maybe I forgot to pin some of these, and maybe that's why there were more emails here that I am now missing. But Alex writes in and says, I feel like as long as I've been working in games, we've failed to properly address the issues with colorblindness. This has been coming up lately because of Assassin's Creed The Shadows, as well as a number of other games. Have you noticed any improvement in colorblindness filters or pictures that are supposed to represent what colorblindness looks like? I remember you saying a while ago that the ones that you saw looked like garbage to you and were not representative. What I really want is to have an idea of what you and other colorblind people are seeing. Like if I showed you two pictures, one with a filter and one without, you couldn't tell the difference. Does this exist? Is it possible? And would it even be useful if such a tool existed? I'm hoping that relying more on contrast and texture than color will help alleviate that problem in my own game, but until I find out someone I know is colorblind, there's no way for me to figure that out for sure. So I guess that would be the ideal, right? Is like if I go to a game, I don't know what I don't know is the actual answer to your question. And so I don't know. When I turn on colorblind filters in games that filter the entire screen, I see it, and it looks wrong to me too. It's not like I turn it and go like, oh, this is what the world looks like, because the world looks like it looks to me because I am colorblind everywhere. And so games look like games. The tree outside looks like the tree outside. I can't, there's no real way for me to convey that to another person, because we get into the stoner conversation of like, what if the color red to me is different than the color red to you? There's just, we don't have that. And so there's never been a colorblind filter that I've toggled on and it hasn't looked like it changed anything. But also that shouldn't be the goal, right? And so as a result, I think anything that is a filter, and this gets back to what my problem was with the Ubisoft tool that they open sourced, was like anything that filters the game in its entirety is kind of missing the point. Because that's not how I see the world either. And so, yeah, when the Doom reboot came along, and they had a colorblind mode that just, as far as I can tell, just turned up the reds, I think is probably what a lot of them just do for Protonopia specifically, because that's a case where, and so in my specific case, among other things, I don't see the color red very strongly. And so, but it's not as simple as, it's like a TV with the red knob turned down. Like it's never that simple, right? It's more that like, I don't see red really strongly, and also it blends in with other things. When I was a kid, I had an orange toy golf club, and I lost that in the grass. Couldn't see it. So it was a case of orange and green looking similar. Why? I don't know. Eyes, man. They're just fucking crazy. That was one of the points, I think, where my parents first realized there was something going on, because they were like, it's right there. And I'm like, I can't, what the fuck are you, and like, it's right there. And I could not see it in the grass. But like, there's no real way to completely fix that with a filter, especially something that is generic. You know, like different people are going to have different levels of severity of these things, and there's going to be a lot of issues with that too, right? Is some people are going to be extremely colorblind, and some people are going to have like a little minor thing. I don't know where mine falls. I don't know if mine is extreme or not. Like, I don't know. And so people always, you know, when we get to talking about this, people write in and go like, well, what about the glasses? They make those glasses. And I saw the video of the person putting on the glasses and crying because they could see color. I have like 6 different pairs of those. They sent me, the Enchroma people sent me a bunch of Enchroma glasses, and I wore them for a while. To try them out, really, just to see like, is this going to help? But it's not. It's something that if I wear them constantly all the time and let my eyes get used to it, there is a difference, right? There is something where it's like, oh, okay. But it's not me seeing the world as it is, as far as I can tell. It is a filter on the world that is going to make those colors seem different in ways that they did not before. So for me, blue and purple look very similar. And this is the worst thing, the most frustrating thing as someone who is colorblind, is you get a lot of people coming up to you and go, yeah, well, what color is this? What color is this? What color is this? And they're pointing at, what color is that? What color is that? And, you know, from years of learned experience, you guess, and you try to make educated guesses about what the likely colors are going to be. And so that means, you know, when I see things like clothing, I'm probably going to guess blue before I guess purple, because not a lot of people wear purple clothes. In some, like, purple, you know, has taken on some kind of societal connotation. It's not for, you know, not for certain things. And so when I guess blue and they go like, oh, you see fine. It's like, no, fuck you. Get fucked. And so I wore those glasses for a good long time. And I remember I was in the car. I wasn't driving. And I was looking down at a hoodie I was wearing. And I was like, oh, this is okay. Like, I'm pretty sure this is purple. I'm pretty sure this is purple. And, you know, I always just assumed it was blue or whatever. And you know, there's things like, I like the color orange. Orange is actually my favorite color. And wearing those glasses for a good long time, orange started looking different. Or rather, the yellow lights on traffic lights started looking orange to me after wearing the glasses for a long time, or how I perceive orange, because I can't tell you like, oh, they started looking orange, but like things like school buses and taxis started looking more like my favorite color. I was like, is my favorite color actually yellow? Because my eyes are like, I fucking don't have the answer. I don't know. At the end of the day, the glasses do something, but the way they marketed the glasses was completely at odds with their own description of how the glasses work. When you buy a pair of Enchromas, or when I got my pairs of Enchromas, they all came with instructions that said, you need to wear these for like a month. You need to keep these on and wear them as much as you can, because your eyes are going to need to adjust. There's an adjustment period. It's going to take some time. It's you know, and it's going to take a long time for you to notice that there's some kind of difference there, you know? And so after wearing them for a long time, I kind of maybe saw a difference, and it's hard to tell. The biggest problem was it was hard to tell the difference between, are the glasses really doing something dramatic, or am I just spending way more time thinking about and focusing on the idea of color than I normally do? Because very quickly you learn to understand that, like, I can't trust my eyes with color, so I just don't think about it. I don't really think about it. I mean, you know, it's not to say that I don't see in color, or, you know, this thing over here is, well, I was going to say it's green, but now I'm like, I don't even know. The puka behind me is like red, right? But you just don't think about it, because you know you can't trust it. So you see what you see and you're like, whatever. Okay, we're moving on. And so as a result of wearing the glasses, like I was constantly staring at everything and going like, is that green? Is that a yellow? I don't know. Maybe I can tell now. Maybe I can tell. Can I tell? Or am I just luckily guessing the right things? I don't even know. I can't tell. It's fucked up. Like conceptually, it's just super fucking fucked up. And so when they started marketing those glasses as doing the fucking internet fucking viral video thing of like a person puts on the glasses and they go, oh my God, I can see. And it was fucking disgusting. And again, their own documentation was like, yeah, most people you need to wear these for a long time for it to fucking sink in. And it was frustrating to see them try to sell the glasses that way, because at best it was a minor shift. And I can't even guarantee that was like a big, again, like, or was I just spending a lot more time staring at colors and really thinking about it? And was that supplying some of the benefit? It's hard to know. Also, at the time, they didn't make all of their glasses were made for outdoor use. And so that was a very limited use to me, a person who needed something I could use on screens. They have since, they now make glasses that are, here's our computer glasses for whatever. But like, it's just not, I don't know. And like, it didn't seem, after wearing them for a few months and at one time when I was walking around the streets of Seattle while wearing them, some like a group of drunk fucking football dudes fucking like almost stopped me on the street to go like, look at this fucking guy wearing sunglasses at night. Fucking, hey Mary, what do you I was just like, what the fuck? Real, because they, the glasses are tinted. They kind of looked like sunglasses. And so it was like this weird thing of like, it was 5 p.m. or something, and I'm walking around at PAX, and I was wearing them, because I was in the middle of trying to wear them for a couple of months, and then these guys like fucking like were like, yeah, let's get a load of this fucking. I was like, what the fuck are they going to beat me up because I'm wearing sunglasses? Because I'm wearing glasses that are not even fucking sunglasses? What the fuck is happening right now? It was super fucking weird. I don't think the glasses look as tinted as they used to either. I think they've improved that aspect of it as well, but it's just fucking strange, man. So yeah, I don't know. So like past a certain point, like I wore them for a while and I was like, huh, interesting. And then I took them off, because, they didn't, like I just didn't need to wear glasses all the time and whatever else. So, and that was that. I still have them. I could always start wearing them again, but it's just not, and it just doesn't really, even the supposed benefit was not so dramatic that it was something where I was like, oh, well, I need these now so I can see color. It was like wearing them was almost more of a distraction because I would have to stop and stare at stuff and go like, am I seeing this right? I don't know. And I don't, the answer is, I don't know. So to answer your actual question, I don't think any of these filters, I don't think anything that's filtering the screen, and is going to make a difference. And, you talk about relying more on contrast and texture. I don't think contrast is even necessarily a safe way to go. For everyone, that is something that probably would work for me. But maybe not. I don't, it depends on how you're going to use it. I think texture and effects and all of that, depending on where you're putting your color elements, is probably a better way to go. And that's kind of the weird conversation about blueprints, where like I started playing blueprints after some people started raving about it. And I was playing it and going like, this seems really neat. I assume it opens up into something else because people were talking about it. The way people were talking about it, and specifically like the game will even recommend to you at a certain point, like, you should probably take notes. I was like, okay. But people were talking about like, oh, I've got this huge notebook full of notes on blueprints and all this other stuff. And I'm playing it and playing it and playing it. And I'm just not seeing anything that looked like, hey, here's why everyone is taking notes. And some of that is probably like you need to get to a certain point and more things need to open up, and there are aspects of it that you need to kind of find or whatever. But I hit a point with it where like there are a bunch of like there are things in that game that do rely on color. And hearing people that had played the shit out of the game say like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of color stuff in there, combined with me looking at it and going like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be looking for. I'm plopping down rooms. I know that some of them are green and some of them are blue. Like that's not causing a problem, but it became a specific situation where I didn't know what to look for if I was missing something or not. And so in a game where they're saying you should take notes, and in a game where they're saying, hey, our colorblind support is not in the game yet, I just kind of looked at all of that and went like, maybe I'm fine, because the dartboard puzzle, I could solve it just fine as it was, right? It was just like, well, whatever, I can do this. And some of the other things where it's like, oh, if it's written in blue, then it's this. If it's written in red, it's this. I was like, okay, well, I can see the difference between blue and red. I'm not worried about that. But there was this sort of larger problem of like, okay, I don't know what I don't know. And I don't want to play this game wondering if there's something hiding in plain sight that I just can't see. And every single puzzle that I get stuck on is now going to be framed with, shit, dude, am I going to even be able to solve this or not? Is this just I need to outsmart the game, or is this a literally I can't see the problem that's staring me in the face? And so not wanting to deal with that, I just uninstalled it. I was like, okay, well, I can't, like, this will make me insane. This will make me fucking crazy if I have to like, also on top of whatever the puzzles the game does have, if I also have to constantly question, can I see it right or not? You know what I mean? And so it was just like, okay, well, whatever. I can't play this right now. Maybe when they put their patch out, we'll see what the changes are, and maybe that will, and I'll give it another go. But like at this point, it was just like, okay, I cannot do this to myself right now. I will fucking go nuts. Because I was finding myself like staring at every corner and staring at every this and going, well, I mean, this is blue here. Was this here? Is this? It was just like, I don't know what to look for and what not to look for. And it's not signposting any of that stuff, obviously, because it's a puzzle game. And so it was just a certain point that I was like, okay, I like hearing from enough other people who were colorblind who were like, fuck this, once they got to a point when they realized what the problem was. And then hearing people who had played 100 hours of the game talk about it specifically as well, it was like, okay, I literally cannot do this. It's a bummer. I don't know. Like, it seems neat. I like the core idea of it, at least what I perceive that idea to be right now. But I can't do that to myself at this point in time. I simply cannot. So yeah. Let's see here. Paul writes in about extraction shooters. Says, I really don't think this type of game can have mass appeal. The Division games, Dark Zones, are so frustrating. I have a great run, and then while I'm waiting for the helicopter, some low-level jerk-off shoots me and takes all my stuff. Marathon will need to figure out a way to make it less painful, don't you think? So I am continuing to think about this stuff, right? About the extraction shooter quandary of like, can these games break through in a mainstream way? And I guess like the larger issue here, and this is something you saw in DMZ mode, and this is something that you saw in, I think it's something that you see in battle royale games as well, to a different extent. Like it's definitely like the same, some of the same concept is like, these games are like gambling. And there is that risk versus reward that is not that different from gambling. There is the like, oh, should I push here or do this? And I think every game is like that to a certain extent, right? Every game is about risk versus reward. Every competitive game, specifically. You know, regular multiplayer team deathmatch Call of Duty is about risk versus reward at the end of the day. It's just that the risk is very low because you can always respawn, and the reward is lower as well because you're just gaining XP or whatever, or having fun. Once we get into like the idea of in-game items, and you can lose those items, and you can not extract with those items, and you can do all of that stuff, I think at some point, if you ratchet that risk and reward meter up too far, at some point, I think you are appealing to the same sorts of people, or the same sort of the same sorts of people who might be inclined to gamble. And I'm not a gambler. I don't really like casinos. I don't, you know, it's just not for me, man. And so to a certain extent, as I started thinking this through more and more, I was like, yeah, I wonder, man, am I never going to be interested in these types of games across the board, specifically because I don't want to fucking have to deal with that level of risk and reward, of that style of gambling, of like, oh shit, I had all this stuff, but I pushed it a little too far and now I have nothing. Like that's very much the fucking poker player's fucking gambit, right? Is like, did you walk away from the table? Did you fucking overplay your hand a little bit? You know, like all of those sorts of things. And some of these games will let you spend some real money there in little ways around the edges, right? No, I don't think anyone's gone full on buy a gun, lose a gun that you paid real money for. Maybe they have. I've not been keeping super close tabs on that stuff. But like I look at that and go like, is that the appeal? Or rather, is the pleasure center or whatever, like is there a similar style of appeal there, that the types of people who will be interested in extraction shooters are going to be the same types of people who might be more inclined to enjoy just straight up gambling, games of skill or whatever, right? And I wonder about that. And I wonder if that is going to be a limiting factor again to the whole genre, where it seems like it's certainly capable of getting big, but I guess like my point is, we talk a lot as we've spoken here on the show about extraction shooters and what Marathon will have to do to become mainstream, and finding ways to tame that risk versus reward in ways that are more appealing to more players. At some point, are you just is that genre compatible with the idea of taming that, and the idea of lowering that level of risk and finding ways for constant progress, or finding ways for people who lose in that specific situation to not go, fuck this, I'm never playing this again. You know, this is a problem that game designers will have to solve, right? And if you've got the right, very smart game designers, then maybe they crack this nut, but like, maybe it is just fundamentally incompatible with certain types of people. The same way gambling is. It's something to think about. I don't know that I mean, that's not a definitive statement by any means. It's just like something, as I've continued to think about, like, what is a game like Marathon going to have to do to get through, and what's the you know, what are you going to have to do to make it work? Like, how do you know, what do you do to make that more appealing and not feel like something where someone is just like losing in such a way that they feel ripped off, that they feel like, oh man, wow, I really did spend all day working on this and now I have nothing to show for it. That's like a fun story once, but then when it happens to me 3 or 4 more times, I'm not telling my friends about the time I almost got away with the stuff. I am uninstalling the game and telling it to go fuck itself. And, you know, like, yes. And then are you also making a game that is deliberately designed to prey upon people with more addictive personalities and so on and so forth, and the ethics of that and so on? That's a larger problem that I think a lot of games need to kind of confront in one way or another, or maybe be a little bit more honest with themselves about. As opposed to just like taking Balatro and saying, this game, we need to age restrict these YouTube videos because this is about gambling, you know, like this stupid narrow view of it, right? Anyway, that's something that's just been on my mind lately. I would be curious to know what you think about that as part of the kind of ongoing conversation about this stuff. Is, you know, is there a world where this game genre, no matter how well someone does it, is it just fundamentally incompatible with certain types of people? I don't have a good answer to that question, but it's, you know, again, something that's been on my mind. Let's see here. Maybe we can take one more. Kyle writes in and says, just curious if you've ever checked out Shader Glass, which is a program that went 1.0 about a month ago. It's an open source overlay you can put over any window on your desktop to make it look like a CRT. Given how many retro games you play, I thought it might be worth checking out if you haven't already. No, I'm good. I don't even like most fake fucking. No, I like that shit unfiltered. I mean, if I wanted that stuff all the time, then, you know, RetroArch has such a robust shader pipeline and all this insane, like they're, you know, they did that stuff with Blur Busters to figure out ways to do like more high tech levels of black frame insertion and subframes and, you know, like all this other stuff on high frame rate monitors that, you know, reduces motion blur in ways that make it look a little bit more like a CRT. And you know, no. I mean, no, I have not tried it out. I think the interesting thing to do with something like that is I saw this is maybe a more extreme case of this, but not something I'm exactly equipped to do. But you see videos of people out there, and I've seen some of this on TikTok and elsewhere, of people taking like Cyberpunk and running it on a 4x3 CRT. And it's fucking weird, and it looks kind of awesome. And if you want that, if you want that OutRun aesthetic made popular by the hit film OutRun, might I recommend the blown out visuals of Cyberpunk on a CRT. Like it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat to see that. You know, you have people out there that are taking like people do it with wrestling a lot, where they're taking, you know, modern wrestling and putting it on CRTs or putting it on VHS tape and editing music over it so it resembles the Attitude Era fucking shit that they want and all. You know, it's neat. It's neat. I'm not like deep into any of it, but I think it's kind of cool that people are doing it. If I had a good, easy way to hook a CRT up to something that was hooked up to my Plex server, I would probably watch some television shows that way. Like 4x3 television shows that you could just watch. Like, I think that would be kind of fucking cool to do. And it would probably, I wonder what it would do. Is that smooth out some of that MPEG compression a little bit? I don't know. I used to use, before Plex existed, I used Xbox Media Player, XBMP. Before there was an XBMC, there was XBMP, which was something that ran on your original modded Xbox and would play videos off your network. And so I downloaded a ton of music videos and watched them well, I guess that was, it's the TV that I have in my garage now. It's the HD CRT that runs at 720p. It'll run at 1080i also, but I think I was running at 720p most of the time. And I would run it there, or I had an even older TV that we had an Xbox hooked up to that you could do that stuff with. And it was kind of neat. You know, you'd watch. I mean, it was mainly music videos because like the file sizes were such, like, I don't know, video piracy was not where it is today in terms of just like all that stuff. And you're like, oh, I don't know, here's a VCD of Torque. I don't know, the hit film Torque. But yeah, I don't know. That was always kind of cool. But yeah, filters and stuff, you know, I don't really have a need for that. I don't really have a use for it. It's neat that stuff exists, but it's really just not for me. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's show. I hope you have a good rest of your week. I'll play some stuff. I will come back on Wednesday morning. We'll play some video games. I don't know for what, but something. This Oblivion thing is out. I don't know. That sounds way originally I was like, oh well, you know, there's always Fatal Fury. I'm like, no, I don't want to play any more of that. I heard a Twitch streamer by the name of Seb Mall. You can find him twitch.tv/Seb Mall sent me a thing. So in City of the Wolves, the pre-order bonus is Terry Bogard's original costume. His with the hat and the jacket, all the Terry Bogard you know and love, not jacket Terry Bogard from Mark of the Wolves. Someone on Twitter is saying Terry's, and he sent this to me. Terry's second costume is bugged and cannot EX cancel his round wave. Unsure of any other way of reporting this, so I'm leaving it out there for now. So it sounds like if you're using the, it says round wave, but yeah, he probably meant ground wave. But it sounds like the costume is broken in such a way that impacts gameplay. That's great. That's great. Terry Bogard for beta testing, as they say. Anyway, that's going to do it for me here. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do something with video games. We'll hang out. Maybe we'll look at this Oblivion thing. I don't know. In the meantime, all the kids, maybe I'll just play Tower Unite. I don't know. I reinstalled Tower Unite. And, you know, maybe we'll just get back into that. It seems like all the kids are sick. My son has been sick for a couple of days. The baby woke up sick this morning, and I bet my daughter is going to be sick real soon too, if she's not already at school sick. So we're back on that horse. So wish us luck. And yeah, I should be here tomorrow. We'll do something. Until then, have a good one.